Alright guys, welcome to Onelife Podcast. Pleasure today to have Donavin here. He is the coach, the owner of Las Vegas Combat Academy. He's very passionate about female self-defense in general, anti-bullying. Super excited to talk to you. I've done martial arts on and off my whole life.
Good.
I know the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Can't wait to pick your brain on this.
Cool, yeah. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
I want to know what got you started in martial arts?
Like everything else, I think growing up in a generation where you're latchkey kids, my mom was looking for something for me to do, stay out of trouble. So my journey started at Boys and Girls Club. It was a Taekwondo class, and then it turned into then there was a karate session, and then there was boxing. So each session I would attend, and wrestling.
Oh, you do different stuff.
So you would
which is very unusual back when you were a kid, I'm sure.
Yeah, so
like mixed martial arts.
It was weird because back then there was pretty much karate, which all the karate schools in town were actually Taekwondo schools, but karate was easier to say than Taekwondo, so everybody kind of used that generic terminology. And then there was boxing and wrestling.
Okay.
And that was pretty much it. Like this is long before there were Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools everywhere, and Muay Thai and Krav Maga and all these other things. But as I kind of grew up, we moved around a little bit, so I kind of was forced to take the martial art that was nearest me.
Oh, gotcha. Which is probably the best thing that happened to you.
Which ultimately gave me a good base, an understanding of the similarities and differences. And really, what I found out was that there's not many differences as far as the physical aspects of it, as far as like a kick is a kick, a punch is a punch.
Yeah.
Now there's some technical things where maybe this style throws it this way, this style throws it that way, but that's more I think more for marketing than anything.
Okay.
So then I was at that point, I'm probably 10 years old at that point, 11 years old.
So that's when you got started?
No, that's what I started when I was around 8 or 9.
Okay.
But around 10 years old, I kind of understood what it was that we were trying to do. And it was off and on for that. But football was my main passion.
Okay.
So so we moved around quite a bit when I was a kid. But I got introduced to Bruce Lee via the movies. And I thought this guy was like 15 feet tall and could move mountains, you know what I mean? Like you're watching the movies. And so I started reading on him and anything I could find about him. Him and Muhammad Ali as well.
Okay.
Those were two major influences in my life. So just wanted to read about them, and then my grandfather had some old reel-to-reel stuff of Muhammad Ali. And he would set up his projector in the living room and watch the old fights when Ali was Cassius Clay.
Gotcha.
Which ended up my son Cassius.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, my son's name was Cassius. And,
so he was a big inspiration.
Big influence. So one of my biggest life events. Went to Lenny Kravitz's concert here in Vegas, and Muhammad Ali was there.
Oh, really?
They brought him out on stage, and we were able to serenade him "Happy Birthday."
How cool was that?
With the whole crowd. Oh, it was awesome. Oh man, I always tell the people if you've not seen a concert, people always ask me if you had to see one person, who would you say? It was Prince for me, but Lenny Kravitz is a close second. Lenny puts on a great show. So, but there's definitely a connection between the different martial arts, right? So I think of Da Vinci's painting, the arms and the body only moves a certain way. Right?
Yeah.
So once you start to understand that, and then understand the cultures in the region that the martial arts came from, then it's easy to understand. So one of the things my grandfather taught me, he says, if you don't know the people until you eat their food and sing their songs.
Okay.
So as a result, I would use martial arts as a conduit to kind of learn things about the societies which they were brought from. One of the consistencies is that there are combat systems for right now. Like the indigenous people would always have a fight system, some sort of self-defense system. Except for the United States, we don't have an indigenous fight system.
No.
Guns have always been our major self-defense.
Interesting.
So that's why people outside of the United States, they don't understand it. Like, you crazy Americans always love their guns. But literally guns are kind of the backbone and fiber of how this country was founded and how it's maintained its presence. We don't have a history
of because America isn't that old, opposed to like the rest of the world.
That's part of it.
Like Thailand is super, Chinese super old.
That's a huge
Australia's
part
on the same page. Like Australia's just like America.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you that America, the forefathers came and colonized the place, and they used weapons against the natives who were here. So guns have always been that primary, kind of what I call a force multiplier, the tool.
Okay.
Right. So
that's interesting.
So it's a unique kind of thing. So So now when you start talking about martial arts, like when does martial arts have its big explosion in the United States? And it's really, if you go back to World War II, excuse me, these guys who came back from Okinawa, right? They came back from Okinawa, they were over there for a few years. When the plane took off, they were a white belt. When it took off and when it landed here, they were a black belt. Nobody was here to challenge them and tell them any differently, right? So they started opening up dojos. And
so that's where the big influence came from,
huge. The World War was
really?
huge. Oh, huge. And then you had the different styles, right? So like Taekwondo comes, and then you had like the Jun Rhee, who is kind of like the father of Taekwondo for the United States.
Yep.
He had that system that he brought here, and then he's got his sons who were in some movies. They were the best of the best movies.
Okay.
The movies. Remember those movies, the best of the best. Okay, so
they were good movies.
Yeah, no, yeah, they were like the
movies.
80s had some great karate style movies, right? So the main character, the Rhee brothers are both in it. The one with the patch, Daehan, he plays Daehan. Him and his brothers. It's Simon and I can't remember his brother's name right now. I apologize to the Rhee brothers, but should be more respectful for them. But at any rate, their father and they came over and they kind of spread the Taekwondo thing, and then you started seeing other martial arts follow suit. Like then in the 70s, kung fu movies were big, so everyone's kung fu fighting, right? So you had that kind of thing, and so
the Chuck Norris,
in the 80s there were ninja movies everywhere. It was like, so you started to see this progression of an interest in martial arts.
That people are seeing and watching.
And people were seeing it, and but you saw a lot of white faces representing the martial art here.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
There is for our history, Black history, there is a huge these kickboxing tournaments. There's a huge Black history in martial art in the United States, and a lot of people don't know it. But a lot of these guys, the top fighters, African American guys, they were winning all the tournaments and all this other stuff. This is in the 70s, and this is primarily when Bruce Lee starts coming around, going, yeah, I mean all that stuff's cool, but that's not really combat.
Okay.
People are like, what the hell are you talking about? You know about this little Asian guy? What do you know? Well, as it turns out, Bruce was extremely skilled and notoriously ill-tempered. Got a lot of fights in Hong Kong. He used to fight on the rooftops in Chinatown in Oakland. He fought in Seattle. I mean, like guys would jump the walls at his house and challenge him to a fight, or come to the movie set and challenge him to a fight. And Bruce was notoriously ill-tempered, and he would fight.
Gotcha.
And so his most famous fight was with Wong Jack Man, who it's been in movies and stuff about why he fought him, but there is truth to the notion that a lot of the Chinese immigrants were not very happy that Bruce was teaching Americans.
Yeah, like Westerners, right? Yeah.
Bruce also wasn't 100% Chinese. So
interesting. Okay.
And on top of that, he didn't speak Mandarin, he spoke Cantonese.
Okay.
So in Chinese culture, which I know very well, my wife's Chinese. So my wife speaks Cantonese and it's Chinese Vietnamese. In Chinese culture, you're not 100% Chinese. You're speaking Cantonese, you don't speak Mandarin, so there's kind of like this hierarchy there. And then on top of that, he was a child actor. He was kind of Macaulay Culkin of his time.
Yeah.
So people are like, well, what the hell does this former child actor know about fighting and combat, right? So there was a lot of stuff going on there, right?
Okay.
And it was somewhat of a power grab, right? At the time, even in Chinatown, up until recently, there were schools in Chinatown in San Francisco. An old school Chinese kung fu school, and if you weren't Chinese, you would walk by the school and you see guys on their hands and knees outside the school waiting for hours, and Sifu would come to the window, look at the window, go away, and shut the window, and they would stay for hours all day long.
Really?
Sifu would walk out, ignore them. They come back the next day and wait on their hands, and they're trying to wait to see how bad they really wanted to get in.
Gotcha.
So because if you weren't Chinese, they weren't letting you in. And then of course when you get in, they beat the crap out of you until you can prove how tough you are.
Gotcha.
So there's this whole thing. It's a lot of stuff. So all
this history fascinated you.
Yeah, always that. So,
Gotcha.
so because I felt like it was a way you really can't understand. Well, why do certain systems do defenses a certain way? And a lot of it depends on like the size of the people that are creating the style, right? So most Asian systems are built on a circular thing. It's yin and yang, and a punch will come and they'll redirect the punch because they're not big, they're not strong, so they're not hitting straight on and going right after people. Well, you get some of the other styles, some of the hard Japanese styles, they will come right at you. They're bigger, they tend to be a little bit bigger, thicker, stronger guys. So there's the old story that Wing Chun was actually made by a woman. That's the old wives' tale. I don't know how true it is.
Okay, I have heard that.
I've heard this before, but I've also heard from people that that a woman didn't create it. However, there were prominent women who were teaching and practicing Wing Chun around China and around the world. So they used to have the boats, back in the day, the red boats they would call them. So all these sailors would pull into port, and then you'd have different provinces, different style of fighting, and they would all kind of go fight each other. And people would bet. Gambling's a huge thing in the Asian culture, right? So they bet on anything. They'll bet on a cricket race. They'll bet on fighting. So then that's how kind of this style thing came. But all it comes down to, and even to this day, this style versus this style. This is only the person's personal interpretation of a given thing. Much like culinary. If we take a recipe and we hand it to two different chefs, and you see it on these cooking shows all the time, they'll start with the same ingredients. You must start with this ingredient, but then at the end they're producing two different plates.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's the same kind of concept in martial art. You start with these basic ingredients, and then the person develops it. Now, some people will look at it and say, I like that. Some people are saying, man, I would never do that. And it could be based on body type, style. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Height,
yes, everything, right? And so what happens is, I'm kind of partial to what Bruce said. You train, keep what's useful, discard what's not. And so big in his own personal exploration, through his understanding of martial art, Bruce was like, look, it's got to be fundamental, it's got to be practical, I got to be able to use it in the street. And the other thing is, it's got to be, after he had that fight with Wong Jack Man, he won the fight by all accounts, but he felt like it took him too long.
Okay.
Because there was too much pageantry and all this other stuff. And after that, he was like, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. We're just going to get right to it.
Just disregarding certain things.
Streamline, so trim the fat.
So over the years of training, you've learned to disregard certain things, find what works, and just make it smaller. Now, and what is that saying that Bruce Lee's saying? Don't fear a man that knows 1,000 kicks. Fear a man that has done one kick 1,000 times.
That's very.
Are you kind of getting at that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's very true, right? So the person who knows what they know and they're confidently training it, they're going to revert to that under stress anyway. Give you an example. I had a young lady named Bella. And Bella came to me when she was very young. She was 9 or 10 years old when I first started training her. Bella's right-handed, but I couldn't get Bella to stop standing like a southpaw. Okay. Rather than fight that, I just taught her how to fight southpaw.
Gotcha.
Because if people say, why did you do that? Did you break her habit? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, if she gets in a fight tomorrow at school, right, or some point in her life, I'm not going to be there. You know what she's going to do? She's going to revert to what she feels comfortable doing athletically.
Rather than worrying about where her feet is.
100%.
She's going to react.
Yes. So my thing is, rather than spend all that time fighting against her brain's natural inclination to tell her body to do that, let's teach her how to operate in that environment. And then it was fine. And she was winning fights, Muay Thai fights, and very, very soon was one of my tougher fighters, all because we let her kind of be what she is. I see so many instructors making this mistake, trying to make their students like them. Be like me, do it the way I do it. It's like, no, you got to look at their body. I've trained people with missing limbs. I've trained people with artificial hips. I've trained people on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. I have students from kids to adult. And you have to find a way to find out what their learning language is. It doesn't matter what your style is.
Learning language, I like that.
Yeah, it's their learning language. Like some people are visual. They need to see someone do it before they can do it. Some people are physical. They need to actually act it out. Some people I can just tell them.
That's not me.
And they can do it. Those people are rare. Those people are pretty rare. You could just tell them to go do it.
Yes.
I had students like that where it was like a blessing, like Tiffany when she was fighting, and Desmond, one of my fighters now, he just had an amazing jumping knee knockout the week before last. It was incredible. I can describe things to them because of the way their minds work. They don't need to see it. I can tell them, and their body kind of just connects to it. And they're pretty rare.
The problem with the schooling system is you only taught one way.
It's huge.
It's one way fits all, and it didn't fit for me. I don't know about you, but it wasn't the way that I learned.
No, and so like as a student, again, part of it was the fact that we moved around a lot, so I didn't have an established base, right? The other part is that I retain information fairly well, and I learned via concepts better than I do absolutes. Okay. So if I have something to relate it to, it crystallizes for me.
Gotcha.
Right? And so there's a lot of students that are like that. And so when you're teaching, when I'm teaching, I'm constantly reading the room. It doesn't matter how many people are in the class. I've had classes as small as 4 people or classes as big as 150, 160 people. And I've got an hour usually with them. Yeah. And I make sure I say something to everyone in the class individually. Hey, you know what? Keep your arm up. Keep your hey, good job. Hey, John, I want them to understand that I'm watching them. I see them and I see everything. I can be in one part of the room, hey, you keep your hands up, stop dropping your hands.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, how the hell did you see me? It's like over years you just train yourself to see it.
Yeah, okay.
And understand
gotcha.
it. But that you mentioned our learning or our educational system in the United States, it's very much, I think it is detrimental to learning. Because people are trying, they're so scared to get the red F. They're afraid to try.
Ask questions, try, fail.
I tell my students all the time, if you screw up, do it at full speed.
Yeah.
Don't be uncommitted. Like if you're gonna break something, break it.
Yeah.
At the very least, because fear is hesitation. Hesitation is now causing you delay, right? You're like, oh, now I'm delayed, and now you can't be in the moment. You can't get off. You can't do what you need to do to stop someone from hurting you because you're stuck in that fear mode because you're not confident about the things that you're doing. So confident at level 1, people always say, why do you keep students at level 1 so long? In my school, I'm not interested in graduating people out of level 1 quickly. I'm not, because I'm a 3rd degree black belt in Krav Maga, right? That means I survived the beatings long enough. That's what it means. That means I'm really good at the basics and I survived the beatings long enough. When I grade other Krav Maga practitioners on a black belt test at the National Training Center, or I go somewhere and they're prepping for a test, the thing that I look for is how do they adjust when things go wrong? If you're doing the technique perfectly, that's fine. But what happens when something goes wrong? Can you adjust quickly? Can you realize, oh, I missed it? Can I fix it on the fly without having to go, what was that technique again?
Gotcha.
Don't want that.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a little different. It's a little bit different of a process. And to be my student, they've got to understand that I'm going to always push them to be better. Even just if it's just a little bit better than they were the day before.
Yep.
Cumulatively, by the end of the week, we're that much better.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if we trained 4 times this week, we're 4 times better than we were last week if we did just these little things. But they all know that their minimum effort, the minimum requirement is maximum effort. The minimum you will do is work your ass off. I don't care if you make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes. In fact, I expect it. I tell my students all the time, I love mistakes. What did you learn? What did you feel? I felt that this was wrong. My elbow was out. Good. So now you understand what not to do. Fix it. So many times, like leading men through combat, leading men through exercises, and I was in the Army for 8 years, and some of the things that I learned there were about leadership were obviously leading from the front, right? You got to walk out in front and do it. I don't ask my students to do anything I haven't done myself.
Yeah.
Nothing. Even when we brought in jiu-jitsu, we didn't always have a jiu-jitsu program. I knew that my Krav Maga students would not buy in unless they saw me do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They won't buy in because they're like, we're Krav, we're not jiu-jitsu. So I did jiu-jitsu and I went to the tournament, and Naga tournament, and I won Naga to gold and gi and no gi. And one of my buddies who owns another school is like, are you crazy? I said, what do you mean? He says, do you know what that would have done? If you would have lost, you're a school owner, and if you lose in the community, it looks bad. I was like, well, first of all, I never even considered losing. That wasn't even, it never even dawned on me that I would lose. And then secondly, I kind of felt differently about it. I thought, no, my thing is like I had a built-in, hey man, I'm learning. I'm a white belt in jiu-jitsu. What do you want me to do? Like, I'm learning. This is a whole new thing.
Yeah.
So even though there is grappling and stuff in Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a much better grappling system than Krav Maga is. That's not even open for debate. What I found through this process though was, forget being a black belt. Forget that. If you get a blue belt in Krav Maga, or you get a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you are going to be formidable against 99% of the people walking around out there.
Absolutely.
You're going to be a problem, and because they're not about that life. And both of those systems, both systems in Jiu-Jitsu and Krav Maga, you're a blue belt. You're sparring, you're rolling, you're dealing with weapons, multiple attackers. You've had bags put over your head. Like, we do all kinds of crazy stuff in my gym, right? So to prepare people for their worst day, training must be worse than the actual event. It has to be worse. Because now when the person gets choked, we're not pretending to choke you in class. We choke you in class. Like, we put you in we have choke out class. We'll do a rear naked choke. We teach you the defense for the first 45 minutes. Teach you how to defend it. The last 15 minutes, your partner gets your back. You sit down. I say go, and if they choke you, they like to choke in. If you tap, they do not respond to your tap.
Gotcha.
They choke you unconscious.
Real life.
Now people are like, oh my God, that's crazy. It's not crazy. What happens is you start to see people fighting like the third monkey trying to get on Noah's Ark, and it just started raining. Right? You see this, like you see a person trying to choke them, and you see the person really fighting. And now you've got 2 people going at full speed safely because they have a goal. And I'm there, we're all there kind of making sure it's safe. But now when a person really gets attacked and gets choked, they understand. It's like, oh, this guy, he don't have a choking. I'm good. I can hang out here all day. I'm good.
Oh, there's no safety net. I need to fight for my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they understand, because they've been through it already.
Yeah.
And that is a big thing. So we don't do the choke out class with the kids, but we do grappling. They do grappling. So they have like 2 days of jiu-jitsu, 2 days of striking. They have MMA. So we're literally teaching them. My philosophy with teaching kids, teach them everything. Kids can speak multiple languages. Adults struggle with this concept because they're like, well, that has to be. Kids, everything's possible to them. So it's fun teaching them because they don't know what they can't do.
Yeah.
They're like, okay,
yeah,
coach. I'm like, hey, go do a diving forward roll over that, and you'll see them kind of like. And then once they figure out they're not going to get hurt, they're diving.
Yeah,
I've had kids trembling to just do a forward roll,
yeah.
and by the end of class, they're diving over bags and because they get it. Adults, they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I got hurt once when I was 9. I'm doing like, so it's a little different.
Let me ask you, what made you start teaching? Like, what makes you think you come in and start a gym, and like where'd that come from?
Dude, like this is literally a passion of mine as a practitioner. That my old instructor, my first mentor, my instructor Roger Donofrio. Shout out to Roger. I haven't seen him in a long time. Roger, I was training under Roger, training every single day. I loved Krav Maga. I love getting better and doing it. And he was like, hey, you ever think about teaching? I was like, no. And he's like, you should go through the instructor certification courses.
Gotcha.
So in Krav Maga, just because you're a black belt doesn't mean that you can teach.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, you don't you have to go through our instructor certification course. So
what is that like? That's amazing, right?
Yeah, no, it's
just because you can do something doesn't mean you can teach it.
That's 100% true. That's why a lot of fighters can't coach for shit.
A lot of people can't do a lot of things. No. They're really good at what they do.
But they can't transfer
patience,
knowledge.
They can't transfer knowledge. They can't
100%.
They can't break things down.
100%.
I'm a good teacher. I do personal training. I can break things down.
Yes.
I'm patient. I know I'm a good teacher.
Yes.
But some people aren't.
No. And
obviously you are too. That's why you do what you do.
And one of the things that we do, we spend a lot of time at our instructor certification courses are exactly that, teaching how to teach. Like, we know the person can do. The certification course has since morphed or modified a little bit because we made some different changes. In the early days of Krav Maga, you would go to the National Training Center and for 7 or 8 days, and you're talking about 10 to 12 hour days, and it's constant and it's just go, and it is exhausting. You know,
Yeah.
I'd come back, 15 pounds lighter in a week, 20 pounds lighter in a week, from.
It's like a boot camp, teaching boot camp.
It's literally what it was.
Yeah.
In the first phase, honestly, there wasn't a lot of teaching. It was, are you tough enough to be in this room? Like, are you physically and mentally tough enough to go through 7 days of this sort of training? And does the candidate have, the physical ability and the prowess, right, to sell the system, if you will.
Okay.
And then you start to develop, there's transfer of knowledge, talks that you have to go through and less modules that you have to go through. And so other seasoned instructors will come and teach how to control a room, how to deal with a problem student, how to set up a lesson plan, how to convey. These are the 3 or 4 mistakes commonly made in each technique and how you can correct them. So there's a lot of that continual education. Now each time you go back, you get another level of certification that you can teach to.
Gotcha.
So simultaneously, you can also earn your belts as a student, but then as an instructor. So I was a fully certified instructor before I was a black belt.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah. So
did that help you with your action? Yeah, 100%. I bet it did.
100%.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So
I feel like more things need to have that.
Yeah. No. And one of the knocks on Krav Maga has been people outside, MMA meathead, they're, I saw Krav Maga. Krav Maga sucks because blah, 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 you can't use it in a cage and all this other stuff. And I laugh at people. It's first of all, that's not even its purpose.
The least most practical thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. The second thing is that I have seen really bad Krav Maga instructors, but I've also seen bad Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructors and bad Taekwondo instructors and bad barbers and bad chefs. So to castigate an entire system based off of one guy, you look at it like, well, how are all these law enforcement agencies around the world and military units around the world using Krav Maga? Why? Well, because it works. Now, are there systems that do things better than Krav Maga? Yes. like I mentioned earlier, our grappling in Krav Maga, it's okay, but it's not at the level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So a smart person would just learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Teaching more to stay on your feet, how to stay on your feet,
100%.
not going to the ground, getting kicked in the head when you do go to the ground.
Multiple attackers, weapons, the what ifs.
There's not a cage, there's not a referee.
Right.
I get what you're saying.
It's so when we first started coming to the sport world, people were like, Krav Maga, oh, we got this. Like my guys are fighting, like MMA fight. And then all of a sudden we started winning fights. And then we're going against some named gyms. We're going against guys who, gyms are named after them or yada, yada, yada. And they, we'd get the same thing. They would snicker and laugh until the fights would start. We haven't won every fight, but we've won more than we've lost. And I've cornered from everywhere, from AMI all the way up to Bellator. And we've won at every level. And my coaching staff has coached in the UFC. And I've got people who coach worlds at jiu-jitsu, World Pan Am Games, all kinds of stuff, So over those years of training, I still am doing continuous education for myself. Like when one of my students came to me, Rudy, my first MMA champion, he came and said, I want to fight MMA. Now, mind you, I'm just a Krav Maga school at that point. So I knew then, I'm like, okay, I need to go invest in my knowledge in fight training for that environment.
Yeah, like a controlled environment.
100%. So like, what are the rules? How am I, how to run a camp?
Yeah, okay.
There's a science to it, right? It's not it's not just...
not being able to hold the cage. Like, just something small can make such a big difference in a fight.
Big difference. Like conditioning drills, conditioning levels, striking systems. How do I coach my guys? Everything. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, but then there's a lot of similarities. Like I mentioned before, punch is punch, kick is kick. So then what I found out is the mentality of Krav Maga helps my fighters. They know when to finish guys. They'll go out there and they'll die on their shield. Those guys, they're tough. They're tough.
Give me like a breakdown of what Krav Maga is. Like,
right. So,
I know you can go in crazy detail, but kind of summarize it.
Summarize it. It's a system, a right now system. If I summarize the way we train Krav Maga, is that I'm training people as if you're going to get into a fight tomorrow.
On the street,
yes,
in a pair of jeans and sneakers,
100%,
with a suit on, or someone come from behind.
You're carrying a bag of groceries and the fight comes.
Yeah,
and also understanding the difference between fighting and self-defense, because there's a big difference, right?
Okay.
But Krav Maga is basically it's a combination of Emi, the founder of Krav Maga, who's a boxer and wrestler, and so was his dad, was a policeman and kind of a tough guy, and he used the things that help survive in the moment. So then he crystallized it, and made a around 1948 is when they kind of give the birthday to Krav Maga. Obviously in Israel it was a right now system because they had the Nazis were coming and trying to take the Jewish population away, so they needed a self-defense system to be able to fight them off, and so Krav Maga was born. And so Emi brought his skill set and his understanding of hand-to-hand combat to it, and his whole concept was that the system should continue to expand in its functionality. But not just have techniques on techniques on techniques. So the original symbol for the Krav Maga is like a broken circle, and then up top there's like a kind of like a, I don't know, they call that a line. The line will come down, and inside the middle of the circle is the Hebrew K and M.
Oh, right? Really?
The Kufman.
Okay.
So there's a broken circle. There's that line that goes all the way through, and then there's a broken circle at the bottom. Okay. The whole idea is good ideas flow in, bad ideas flow out.
Gotcha.
So Emi was big on, don't just take my word for it thing. If you guys can improve it, improve it.
How good's that?
Right?
Like innovate my style.
That was his whole thing. His whole thing was like,
nuts.
if I come back in 50 years and you haven't made it improved, then you've wasted 50 years.
Yeah, gotcha.
Make sense?
And Krav Maga, it's not pretty, it's not fancy, but it's functional, it's practical.
It's right now, it's functional, it's practical, it's based on, can the smallest person in the room do it to the largest person in the room?
Yeah, it's made for a 5-foot female
100%.
to defend herself against someone like you, right?
And that's, by the way, that's our testing. That's our, ultimately, there's some things that I can do that I know my students can't do because of my size.
Yeah,
but that's for my personal box.
Yeah.
That is not something that I would say, okay, this is Krav Maga, you do this for everyone. Well, because now we're talking into, well, Donavin, you can do it, you're big and strong. Right. So the litmus test for all of our techniques, can the smallest person in the room do it to the biggest, strongest, fastest person in the room?
But she's also being told to go for the eyes, go for the nuts, go for the throat.
It's her only shot.
Yeah, there's no.
It's her only shot. Like
what am I trying to say? There's no rules, is there?
Rule number
street
one.
Fighting.
Rule number one, there are no rules. Rule number two, always refer to rule number one.
Yeah,
No
that's
rules.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
This is functional stuff for anybody
100%.
out there, kids, adults, females, to defend themselves.
Well, and also,
Full stop.
and the idea is that you're not going to survive because your technique is better than a guy's technique. That's not, honestly, out in the street, it's your commitment level. Do you understand the moment? Do you understand, hey, there's a pre-incident indicator always that this thing's going to go south. For instance, you're talking to a guy at the bar. He's got a bottle in his hand, and all of a sudden he inverts his grip.
So learning to be aware of that.
That's a danger zone right there.
Okay.
If it's me, if I can't immediately back away from the guy, I'm going to destroy him.
Okay.
I'm not even going to wait for him to pick that bottle up. If he changes his grip on that bottle,
yeah,
and I'm like, okay, I'm too close to him to run away because he'll hit me. I don't have an easy escape, and he's showing me other things like, he's puffing up a little bit, becoming more agitated, his jaw's clenched, he's now changed his grip. Okay, see, these are all pre-incident indicators that this is going to go down. Why do I need to wait for this guy to hit me? I'm not. I'm going to hit him first.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to be like a bad lever. Get off first. Like, you have to get
out
off first.
safe by doing that.
100%. Because again, he's showing me it's almost like he emailed me. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hit you.
You're not going to give him permission.
No, I'm not going to do that, because if action is faster than reaction. And so all these people, there was a big debate on.
How simple is that?
Simple. Action always precedes reaction.
I love that.
Always.
Yeah.
So I tell people all the time, there was a big debate on TikTok. I posted the video regarding a store owner in New York at a bodega.
Oh, the guy. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So I said very, very early, I'm like, there's no way they're going to convict this guy. First of all, he shouldn't even been arrested. It's ridiculous. It's classic self-defense. People said, well, in New York, you have a duty to flee. I'm like, he tried. The guy grabbed him.
Yeah.
There's a 20-something.
He did try it first, right?
He tried to leave. The guy grabbed him. The guy pulled
it.
And now he's standing over him in front of him. The guy grabbed a knife. And he had to grab a force multiplier. You expect that guy? He can't outrun him. He's 20-something years old. He can't outrun him.
Too.
That was here in town. That was a few weeks later.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is in New York. The guy stabbed the guy. The guy died. And they initially arrested the store, the clerk, and sent him to Rikers. But then the video got out, and people were like, "Well, wait a minute. And I said very early, I was like, this is self-defense. It's clearly self-defense." And people, of course, all the TikTok lawyers are like, "You've got to wait for him to hit you first." That is elementary school. And if there's one thing I want to dispel, two things. First thing, this whole notion that it's only self-defense if the guy hits me first is the most ridiculous elementary school mentality I've ever heard in my life. I always ask people, okay, you and I are going to get into a fight. You're going to give me the first shot. I get the first shot.
That's it. That's all over, right? If I'm lucky,
no, that's like I tell them, like, who was taking that? Like, who was taking that bet that you're going to survive the punch?
Yeah, I'm not taking that bet.
That's stupid.
Not with anybody.
No one. Like, I'm not gonna, like. Why would you do it? Like, why would you? Well, at least then I'm legally covered. No, you're not, because that still could be mutual combat. If you don't understand the difference between self-defense fighting and mutual combat, like there's three things there. That doesn't mean it's self-defense just because you hit me first. If hey, fuck you, that kind of thing. But I don't leave, and I'm like, no, I'm not leaving. You're not, like, I'm not leaving. Okay, so guess what? We just agreed to. We agreed to the fight.
Yeah.
And so whoever throws the punch first at that point is completely irrelevant because it's mutual combat at that point.
Gotcha.
There are some states, Nevada's not one of them, but there are some states that have mutual combat laws. They can fight each other. Once one of them either gets the upper hand or they indicate either verbally or non-verbally that they don't want to fight, you have to stop.
Gotcha.
But we don't live in a state like that. But I even still live in a state like that. I wouldn't let someone hit me first. It's just a stupid ploy.
And honestly, you're both getting assault charged, and you are having the consequence of being hit by a bottle or.
Here's the thing: if you can articulate why you did what you did, and this is another part of self-defense training. Krav Maga, we talk about left of bang or pre-incident, the incident, and then after-action review. Like, all of that is in the self-defense continuum.
Yeah.
Pre-incident indicators. Okay, what was he doing? Well, you know what? He was walking towards me. He's staring at me. His jaw's clenched. His fists are balled up. He was muttering to himself or saying that he was going to hurt me, and I was trapped. I couldn't get out. He's between myself and the exit. Like, I couldn't get out. Okay, so what happened? Well, when he got close enough to me, he's using profane language. He's walking towards me, his fist balled up. I front kicked him. I didn't even let him get close to me. I kicked him first. People say, well, you hit him first, and that's wrong. No, it's not. What is assault? Assault is, I make a threat to you. I'm going to kick your ass. Now, you have to look at me and say, well, does this guy have the ability to carry out the threat he just made? Yeah. by his actions, do you think that he's serious? Yeah. Does he have the intent? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So ability and intent. So now that's the threat. That's by itself, that's a threat. That's illegal. The battery is the actual physical contact.
Okay.
So if someone says I was assaulted, that means that some person made you feel afraid. He said something to you, you felt like genuinely concerned for your personal safety. But the battery is actually the physical contact. Is the assault enough to hit someone? In some cases, yes. Especially if it's a smaller person who's now being threatened. Is she supposed, like female, she's supposed to wait till I grab her?
Or trapped or unable to get
There's
away.
no way.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make any sense. So that's why the laws are written that way, because it's like, well, her, by the way, in that situation, if I'm the aggressor and the size difference is greater, she has that, the victim would have more rope to use, if you will, in a response, a violent response. They could pick up a force multiplier. You know why? You can't beat me one-on-one in a fight. I'm too big. So now they get a stick, they get a knife, they get a gun, they get something like this to say, hey, look, I'm willing to use this to protect myself because I can't beat you physically. So there's a lot of that stuff, and a lot of people are just completely misinformed about what constitutes self-defense.
Gotcha.
What constitutes excessive force or reasonable force. So I'm a use of force expert as well. I was on the use of force review board with Metro for 3 years, and the CERT team, where we actually adjudicated officer involved shootings and also use of force when they had to go hands on. Okay. We adjudicated those things. We read the reports, went out to I was on many shootings, many cases. We were out 2 o'clock in the morning behind that yellow tape, walking the scene, finding out what happened, reviewing the 911 calls, the radio traffic, the training the officer had, the response, what they knew, what they didn't know. And then we get that information and we vote on it and say, hey, look, does this meet the standard of reasonable force?
Gotcha.
Okay. So it's not just self-defense. It's not just martial arts. I use my skill set and my understanding of violence, my understanding of self-defense, to help the community and also train my students and understand what they can and cannot do legally.
Gotcha. I want to go back to you got a kid.
Yes.
You're a mom. You got an 8-year-old kid. You want to get him into martial arts.
Yeah.
Is any martial arts better than no martial arts? So like Taekwondo, karate. Like obviously, what you do is probably one of the most functional, if not the most functional thing.
It's unique. Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Oh man. So all martial arts are good for what they were created for.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is anytime a kid is particularly with children, anytime a kid is in a structured environment where they're being taught values of leadership, they're being taught values of teamwork, they're being taught values of understanding their self-worth, and therefore how that extends to other people's self-worth. Yeah. Those are good things. All of those things.
Discipline.
They're all phenomenal.
Okay, that's what I thought you were going to go with.
Yeah. That. So that part is fine.
Yeah.
The part that I will differ and differ on is the practicality of the things that they're being taught.
Practicality.
Right.
Okay. But isn't it good to know anything opposed to nothing?
Well,
you think sometimes it's more.
Sometimes it can be a false sense of security.
Yeah, it's more fluff.
Right, it's more fluff, and then it's the wrong tool for the job. Like if, like I always tell people, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Or spinning back kicks, not real practical on a skill
like
fly.
Slap kicks and crescent kicks. Not, like you can live a million lifetimes and not need to use any of those.
Okay.
Right? So especially in the self-defense scenario. Now, if I'm in a Taekwondo tournament and the other person is doing Taekwondo and we've all agreed to kind of Taekwondo each other, then that's different, right? So that's different because for that environment, that's okay, but that's not the street, right? So I think any self-defense system worth its salt, no matter what it's called, should have striking, grappling, multiple attacker scenarios, and empty hand versus weapons.
And also functional training.
And functional training to do those. But those are your pillars, right? Those are your things that you have to have. Now, people out there in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu land are going to be like, well, wait a minute. BJJ is great, blah, blah, and it is. We have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I train. Again, is it the right tool for the job all the time? No. By the way, is Krav Maga the right tool? No. All the time, 100% of the time? No. Sometimes it is. I had a student once, before he became my student, he was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He got into a fight at a bar over a girl, if you can believe it or not.
Been there.
Right? We've all had those days, right? He ends up getting the guy on the ground, takes the guy's back. He's like, I've been here before. Gets down, takes his back. The guy's buddy comes up behind him, starts punching him, hitting him, boom, 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 boom. He pushes the guy away, stands up, turns to face the guy who was punching him, starts to feel woozy and passes out. It wasn't punches, he was stabbing him. He stabbed him 13 times. Because he's locked up around a guy. Now,
what's funny, I've been there. Yeah. I've been jumped by 7 guys at a club over a girl. And
imagine that.
He's a football player. He tackled me. I guillotined him. Yeah. I looked up. There's 2 guys coming at me.
Yeah.
I let go.
Yeah.
That wasn't functional. Grappling was not functional.
At that moment.
But then I threw a front kick, got some space.
There you go.
So that was,
there you go.
It wasn't the right tool for the job at that situation.
100%.
But having a base of all skills that allowed me to improvise and pivot.
And I would even argue that you did enough jiu-jitsu not to get jiu-jitsu'd. Like, that's kind of the thing that's straight. I call it thug jitsu. What we do is we do thug jitsu. We'll use jiu-jitsu principles, get ourselves in position so I can do maximum damage to this guy and stand up.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I don't want to be married to the grapple in the street. I don't need to finish the guillotine. I need to use the guillotine to stand up. Now, I see what else is coming. Now you're changing modes, right?
Yeah.
So going back to my Bruce Lee analogy, in Enter the Dragon, the cavern scene, the fights, it's like the best fight scene ever in a martial art movie. His whole concept for that scene is using what he had to use at that moment to deal with the threat that exists.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see him go empty hand. You'll see him he'll see him control. He does some joint lock stuff. You'll see him take the nunchucks. You'll see him get the Eskrima sticks. He has the bow staff at one point. So he's using what he needs to use at that moment.
In the environment.
He's literally being like water. That's his whole concept. You pour water to a box, it becomes a box.
I never looked at it like that, but he's adapting to his environment.
He's adapting to the environment.
And 1-on-1 or 5-on-1.
100%. And people say, well, what style was that? Like, it doesn't matter at that moment. He's expressing himself.
Did he defend himself? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. And ultimately, like, that's all that matters, right?
That's all that matters.
So people, it's not like I kick a guy, he's gonna be like, oh, that was a Muay Thai kick. That was a Krav Maga round kick.
Did I bounce off you? Or am I on the ground looking up? Yeah.
Like, the guy's gonna be like, ouch, you kicked me. You know, like that's the idea. So there's people do that to hold on to this notion that whatever they're into is superior to what everyone else is into.
Which is a bad thing to be, right?
It's human nature.
Yeah.
You know, I love the Redskins, so therefore the Cowboys have to suck.
Yeah.
To justify my love for the Redskins,
yeah.
right? So, which I don't love the Redskins, but what I'm saying is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy will be like, oh, Krav Maga sucks. That ain't gonna work. We do that. Like, okay, cool. Well, tell you what. When's the last time at your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, while you were rolling, while you were doing your thing, all of a sudden your instructor slid shock knives out across the floor? And the first person to it can stab the shit out if you get it.
Yeah, free for all. Like,
so we've done that at our gym, and I don't tell them. I'll just come slide knives out while they're rolling. Slide knives out. Guy look over, boom. And now all of a sudden, they're not doing jiu-jitsu. They're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And they're using jiu-jitsu to that end. That to me is a higher level of training. Not to do jiu-jitsu, but to use jiu-jitsu. Not to do Krav Maga, but to use it in the moment that I need to use it.
Love that.
So that's kind of my philosophy about the thing.
Okay, so you're big on anti-bullying.
Yes.
You got a parent. You find out the kid's being bullied.
Yeah.
What is the right approach?
So when I get a kid that comes into school and I know they've been a victim of bullying or suspect that they have been, first thing we do is try to talk to the kid.
Okay.
Find out what happened.
Is that hard to do?
No. Usually after you establish a little bit of rapport with them, sometimes they'll cry and they're upset, and you can tell that they've suffered some trauma, or it was fearful. They had a lot of fear associated with it, right? So it's hard for them. And we talk about it. What happened? How did it make you feel? Okay. What do you think that could have been done, to avoid it? And a lot of times they're like, I don't know. They have no idea. And because that part's out of their hands. So I always try to encourage parents. Let's develop right now what we call go buttons, right, for the kid. Go, I'm leaving this kid. I'm going to stay away from this kid, or I may have to engage him. I have personal go buttons. Like, anybody touches my wife, my kids, like that.
Dead.
I don't care. Like, you could be a cop in full uniform. If you try to manhandle anybody, my wife, my kids.
Yeah.
Hey, bud. Like, I'll deal with the charges later. You cannot.
Yeah.
Like, so I always tell people, thug or cop, tread lightly, because there's some of us that are willing to do awful things to you for that, right? And so that's a go button. A go button is not going off on a person who had the temerity to have 14 items in the 12 items or less line, right? Like, that's not a go button. That's just, what do you count people's groceries for? Like, chill, right? So it kind of keeps you in check. Like, there's things that I'm willing to go for, and things that I'm just like, I don't care, right? So we try to establish that rapport with the kids, get them to start to think that way. The other thing is we're going to change them. We're going to change them psychologically. We're going to change them. We're going to teach them to value themselves so much that they will never tolerate someone trying to make them feel like less of a human being, or because they don't have the cool shoes on, or because whatever the issue is. Hey, I like me so much, I'm not going to let you do that to me.
Gotcha.
And I'm not going to let you do it to another kid in front of me. Right?
What about, we'll get back to the training in a sec, but what about besides like the training? What is the right approach if a parent knows the child's being bullied? Sure. Do they go to school? Do they go to the parent? Who needs to know what, and when does it need to be changed, and when should action be taken?
So I think that each parent has to have a rapport with their own kid. What you're really looking for is, one, you want to leave the door open for your kid to always be able to come and tell you if someone's...
To be able to communicate.
Always.
Okay. How do you do that, you think?
So number one thing is to sit the kids down, and as a coach, I always encourage them, hey, you could talk to mom and dad about these things. Right?
I do the same thing, actually.
Yeah, you have to. Like let them know that, hey, listen, I know, especially when they become teenagers and like, oh, your parents are a drag, they tell you no, you can't go do whatever you want. But here's the thing, ultimately, they love you and they have your best interests at heart.
And you can tell me anything at any time.
Yes,
always making that clear, right?
And then also helping the parents understand that if your kid comes to you about something like that, you cannot blow them off. The worst thing parents do is like, oh, that boys will be boys, and kind of blow them off. That's you thinking, and having lived through life and had all your experiences, you have this shield. All of us as adults, we can just be like, I don't care about that. The kid has not developed that yet. They don't have enough, like, that's a person who maybe was just their friend last week, and now this week they're being bullied by him. So it's somewhat traumatic for them. But
you also don't want to go off the rails and blow up the other side either, do you?
No.
Call the parents.
I always I try to, unless you have a prior existing relationship with that parent, I would not make that phone call to the parent first. I would go to the school first, or to the environment in which the bullying took place. Let's say it was at Sunday school, or I don't know, somewhere where the kids were, right?
You go
to whoever's there, and let them know, hey, this was an issue, and my son came to me about this. I'm coming to you about it to let you know that I'm aware of it. Now you're aware of it. Here's how I told my son to handle it.
Are you documenting that?
I think you should follow up with an email.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no problem.
You keep hearing stuff. I tell Sansa, nothing happened. It continued.
Per our conversation on X date.
Okay.
That is literally telling
everyone,
I'm documenting this conversation.
Everybody involved.
Okay. And I've told you already that this has happened. Now, I know that Clark County School District, for instance, has a zero tolerance policy, and I'm all for it. But I think families should develop their own zero tolerance policy. And literally, if it's that serious at your school, you know the kid has a problem in those schools, and maybe leadership isn't really willing to take advantage of it, send your kid first day of school, send them with your written zero tolerance policy to their administrator and hand it to them.
This is what my kid's going to do if he gets bullied.
Yes, 100%.
Gotcha.
100%. So we're letting you know up front, if you don't
take action on this
bully, because don't let my kid have to do it. And my kids have been trained since they can crawl.
Yeah, but what about a kid that hasn't trained? They're shy, that they've got no idea how to defend themselves. Besides going and training, like, how do you take immediate action on that?
Well, first of all, you can try and build a cocoon around them as far as letting all the adults that are decision makers know that this is an issue. Number one, but number two, I'm vehemently opposed to people not training their kids, and it's not just because I'm in the business.
No.
I first of all, timidity is the worst thing ever. It's a useless thing unless I'm holding a baby or caring for a pet. I do not need timidity. And when people describe their kids as shy, I believe they're breeding cowardice.
Okay.
You let your kid walks into a room, your kid doesn't go speak to all the adults in the room and say hello, introduce themselves to them. Well, they're a little shy. Break them from that. Don't allow them to hide in their
You're
shyness.
right, because you either stay shy or you break yourself as you become an adult. I was shy as a kid, but I broke myself out of that.
100%. But
my parents could have broken me out of that.
Yes, and how much different would your approach been?
Yes, so much different.
Right. So one of the things, like my children are athletes. They're great students and are athletes. They both play. They're given sports at a highly competitive level. My son's on the Nike circuit, and he's in 8th grade now. We travel all over the country playing basketball all over the place. My daughter, same thing with swimming. She's Olympic swimming. We travel all over the country doing those kinds of things, and but their confidence level's high. Because they failed, because since they could crawl, they've been training and they've been in environments, and they knew, like my son both of them used to do tap dancing, hip hop dancing. All of a sudden, My son one day comes to me and says, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, okay. He was young, very young. He was 6. This is my last one, Dad. I don't know. Okay. But I said, you committed to this show that you have to do at the Smith Center. He's like, I know. I said, so what's the rule? Finish what we start.
Gotcha.
And we start that early. Now, at the end of the season, after you fulfilled your commitment, you can walk.
Gotcha.
But you're not going to quit before you finish this commitment.
I like that.
Like that's not going to happen.
That's a staple in life, right?
100%.
Yeah,
because if you give your kids an out, they'll take it. Human beings will do anything to avoid pain and anything to get pleasure. That's how we're wired.
And it's getting worse with social.
It's the worst now. Well, what's worse now is the lack of accountability. Like, it sounds bad, but we always talk about F little Johnny, not to the kids, but I'm always mentioning like, F little Johnny, what do you mean? I'm like, I think that it's absurd for any parent to believe that the kid who does the least amount of work, puts in the least amount of effort, deserves a seat at the table. That's absurd. It's like that doesn't, and nowhere in the world does that work. Nowhere like you've done the least amount of work. We all know you've been at work before. Like I always challenge people, go ask your boss if they had to pick 20% of their staff, who would make the cut and who wouldn't make the cut.
It's like just because you worked here for a longer period of time, you should get the promotion.
Ridiculous.
Whoever works harder should get the promotion.
And whoever performs. Works
hardest and performs.
Yeah, you got to perform. Yeah. Like I don't believe in this whole like.
Because that's life. That's business. Life. That's everything.
100%. We're in a meritorious environment.
It's no gray area. It's black and white.
And the sooner kids understand that, the better.
I feel like most adults don't understand that.
Because they were never taught when they were kids. And now it's even worse because parents are lying to their kids. Oh, it's okay. You know what? Oh, hey, you know what? We'll ask all the people who are winning all the time, hey, if it's okay, could you not win so much? Because it's not fair that little Johnny doesn't get a chance to win. I'm like, screw little Johnny. While little Johnny was watching television, these other kids were in the gym grinding.
Exactly.
They were putting forth the effort. They were out slaying dragons and killing their fear and doing. So now when it comes time for game time, that's a celebration of all the work that they've done.
That reminds me of Kobe. Kobe would always talk about
100%.
He would not pass the ball to certain players because
I don't trust you.
Yeah, he was there before they got there. He stayed after they left.
Listen,
and he wondered why they never got the ball.
Well,
he's like, I don't trust you with the ball because you're not putting the time.
Because I know exactly who you are.
Yeah,
and that was his big thing, right? So to me, one of the great tragedies of losing Kobe was his ability to crystallize. He was one of the first, in my opinion, and Ali was too, athletes to let you know what made him tick. Because a lot of guys, you ask them questions, they'll beat around the bush. Kobe was like, no, I'm going to tell you why I did this.
It's pretty straight up, wasn't he?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you just love him. Now it was tragic. My son met Kobe Bryant a year to the day before he died.
Really?
And we were going back into that gym so a year later, we're walking into the gym. And as we're walking into the gym, the news hits that Kobe died. Now we have my son and Kobe's nephew were teammates. We know the family fairly well, his family. And it was just an awful to be in Southern California the day that Kobe Bryant dies.
Yeah.
In a gym full of kids who are now coming off the court. And
who all worship him.
And you have to explain to them he's gone. It was awful. It was awful. I mean, I of course, our thoughts were with his family and with his sister and brother-in-law and Jet, his nephew. Like, our thoughts were immediate. That's my son. My son asked first. First thing he asked about was Jet. He's like, well, where's Jet? And it was just an awful day. And they stopped the tournament and everyone kind of announced it, and everyone kind of, but for a few days you're walking around Southern California and you would look at someone else and just you just shake your head, and they knew why you were shaking your head. It was awful, bro. It was, but the greatness of Kobe was that Mamba mentality, man. Like the mentality of, hey, listen, if you're not going to work hard, then I'm going to make sure I'm in top shape because I've got to cover for your ass.
Yeah,
And Kobe's like, the reason why I'm taking this shot is because I've put up the shots in the gym. I put in the work. You didn't. So F you, I'm taking the shot.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's life. That's life. And a lot of people don't want to hear this. There's an entire generation now who believes that people who grind are evil. Oh, I don't want to live like that. It's not fair that I have to pay back my college loans, or it's not fair that I don't have a job that pays me $150,000 a year, even though I don't have any skill set to go with it. You know, it's crazy to me. It's like social media has made extraordinary look so attainable.
Yeah.
That people think that all they have to do is make a couple videos and
that's it.
Like, no, man. Like, we're all a work in progress. Like we're all a work in progress. I people are like, oh, people criticize you all the time. I don't care, bro. Like, listen, I'm sharing with the world my calling, my gifts, my things that I've learned over time period. It's either for you or it's not. And if you don't like it, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Like,
it's
I'm
okay.
totally okay with it.
It's okay, but just don't complain or make excuses about it.
That's the thing.
That's
the
difference.
So if I put up a video, someone says, "Oh, that won't work," I always ask, "Okay, post your video," and they go dead silent. The reason why is because they don't have one.
Everyone's trying to tear each other down.
Yes.
You got a few people like us that are trying to bring everybody up. And I honestly, I couldn't care. I got tunnel vision. I'm doing my thing. And does it make me happy? Yes or no? And that's all I'm worried about.
By the way, that's the healthiest approach that you could take, honestly. And it's the same thing with kids, right? Like kids, where do people say, oh, your kids are so confident? And I'm like, because we've raised them in an environment that they know, go try, go do, go see the world. When we go to another country or we go to another place they've never been, we're not going to eat Olive Garden in Costa Rica, right? Like,
I don't want to.
I don't eat it here.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you want to do the culture.
Like, yeah, well, let's go to Wendy's. I can go to Wendy's at home.
Exactly.
Like, where do you eat?
Exactly.
So we go to places, you know, whether it's, you know, Aruba. We went to Aruba this summer, and you know, we're all over the island, and we're eating the local foods and the local fishes and all the other stuff, and my thing is to show my kids, hey, look, you're looking for the similarities in people, but also the differences, and then you can appreciate each other that way.
You can appreciate
perspective. 100%. Like, it's not just about what we do in our house in Vegas. It's about what the global, like the global thing. But in order to see that, you have to appreciate yourself, but also know that you can have pride in who you are, but not to the detriment of someone else. Like even you know, we talk about this a lot with like the LGBTQ thing in sports now. It's a big thing. In my industry, dealing with young people who may identify opposite of what they were born, or what have you, right? Or they're going through that kind of transitional space. I have a young man, call him Red. Red's in some of my videos and stuff, but Red wears eyeliner and he paints his fingernails. He dresses like a rocker from the 80s. And so he's on one of the videos and people are like, is that dude wearing eyeliner? What's his problem? I'm like, he's a musician and a young kid who's expressing himself.
Doesn't make him happy.
And you're here trying to tear a kid down.
Yeah.
And I literally said, one of us is a douchebag. I don't think it's me.
Yeah, that's the...
You know what I mean? Like,
that's the thing, right? It's like, sometimes, like, if you see someone who's overweight but they're happy, let them be.
Why are you worried about it for?
Yeah, why do you care?
Who cares?
Are they happy? If they're genuinely happy, let them be happy. Yeah. You're the one who's insecure and unhappy because you're trying to tear everybody down and look at everybody. You're watching everybody else's life opposed to what, like...
Even worse is a guy making fun of someone who's working out. They're heavy. They're working out.
Yeah.
Like, you see them trying to get better, but you're going to pick them up. Like, I have people like, oh, you should be in better shape. I laugh at people. I'm like, I can literally outlift, outrun, outfight, and outfuck you with three of your best friends. You know, on my worst day in the gym, I'm stronger than you. And
it's
like,
I've done, you're too big, you're too small, you're too lean, you're too fat.
Yeah,
I was like, why is any of this your business?
Yes.
This is me. Am I happy? Yes or no? Am I healthy? Yes or no? It's me. That's on me. It's got nothing to do with anybody else but me.
But here's the problem. See, the problem is that people are such losers that they want to tear everybody else down around them. It has nothing to do that they're unhappy with you. They're unhappy with themselves.
Exactly.
Right. So like in my world, like I get, oh, that shit won't work. This martial art is bullshit. And I'm like, bro, my schedule is literally posted online. You know exactly where I'm going to be every single day. If you feel that kind of way and you feel like you're just gonna, I had a guy like, I should go down there and show him, teach him a lesson. I literally put on TikTok, when will you come? When will you be here? He went silent. He went dark. Yeah. Because the reality of it is that they're not about that life. Like, now you're stepping into a whole different world. You're gonna crawl out from behind your computer.
Yeah,
because I knew if you were about it, you wouldn't be talking like that, because you'd be training and doing something.
Yeah.
And I probably know someone that knows you.
Yeah.
Right? but I don't. I've never heard of you. And I go check your TikTok page. You got like a picture of your cat and like 3 followers. It's a dummy account because you're so like. I always laugh at people like, dude, you're such a coward. You won't even say it in your government name. People know like I'm whatever I say, I'll stand on it.
Yeah.
And then going out of your way to be rude to people and being an asshole to people. Now some people deserve it. Some people will cross the line. And it's like, okay, you crossed the line now. Now I'm gonna let you up. Like I've done that. Yeah. I've done like, hey, you crossed the line. Like I'm not gonna have you talk about my autistic student who rides a bus to come to school 3 days a week, and you're talking about how his hands are down while you're sitting on your ass in your mom's house in her basement playing your PlayStation. I rebuke that. Like that's not you're a scumbag doing that kind of stuff because he's out here. He's already done more than you'll ever do with your life.
Yeah.
He's fighting more challenges than you will ever have, and you're running your mouth. That to me, that's insulting. Like that's when I'll be like, all right, like if you feel that kind of way, then you come down here, and we'll work it out.
Gotcha.
But they won't show up. They're not stupid enough to show up.
How do you deal with something you and I didn't deal with, which is online bullying?
Yeah. So unplug. That's the first thing. Unplug it.
Gotcha.
Hey, listen, my son
like getting haters online.
I get haters online, but my thing is I can deal with them. I ignore them.
So ignore it. Okay, so you're stepping away from it.
Well, here's the other thing. My kids, because I have teenagers and they're all wrapped up in TikTok and Twitter and everything else. My wife did not want them to have phones for the longest because of that. But I told her, I said, why hide from it instead of teach them how to navigate through it?
Yeah. I like that.
Right? So my thing is like, okay, remember this, guys. Remember who you are. If they're not willing to come and say it directly to your face, don't respect it.
I like that.
Like, you can say whatever you want about. I tell people all the time, I heard this rumor about you. Yep, believe all of them. Every rumor you've ever heard about me, believe all of them, because it's an awesome story, isn't it? I'm either an asshole or I'm a good guy. The guy's a jerk. He's this. Whatever it is, believe all of it. All of them. And then you make up for yourself what you're going to do. Ultimately, what you're going to find out is I don't care what you think. Right? So my son and my kid, my daughter, same thing. Like, especially when you're raising young ladies, they're inundated with these imagery of what makes someone beautiful, what makes someone hip, what makes someone cool, especially for young ladies. I think it's awful. You know, these stupid magazines in the aisle in the store and all that. And then you got the e-entertainment and all this other stuff, constantly inundating these kids with imagery of if you don't have these things, you're not cool. And the thing is, teaching them how to believe in themselves. And I don't think that there's any better venue than training in sports. I just don't. Confidence comes from failing and then achieving. That's where confidence comes from. Not trying the first time and getting it right. You're not gonna be confident. You're just gonna be like, cocky, arrogant.
Not anything from that.
No, but when you fail and you get back up and you go again and you fix why you failed, your confidence. Now you know you can handle the stressors that come in life. So online bullying, to me, yes, I realize it's a real thing, but sometimes I think it's just unplug, turn it off. Like you have to tell your kids, hey, like on our phone, like right now, they're still young, so we control their phones. I literally have a button I can turn everything off on my phone. If they've been online too long, turn it off. Wi-Fi, turn it off. Like so we're involved in that. And I also have passwords to all their stuff. I'm not snooping on their stuff, but we have passwords. They don't have anything that we don't have a password to. They're completely held accountable for the language that they use and for the people that they interact with online. And they have to be real friends. My kids cannot have any friends online that they physically do not know.
Okay.
Period. I'm like, who the hell is? Oh, that's John. Do you remember John? He's such and such. I'm like, okay, because I want to know who that person is.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start to kind of build that cocoon around them and let them flourish, and then you just expand it as they get older.
Gotcha.
You just expand it and talk to them about it. Like that's the big thing. Is like, hey, don't be so caught up in other people's opinion of who you are. Right? Like that's just their opinion. Have they spent time with you? No. Do they know you? No. Do they know anything about your family? No. Then what the hell do they know?
Yeah.
They know nothing. What they know is what they feel. I feel this way about that. Oh, I don't like you. You know, my daughter, for instance, my daughter came home one day, she was younger, and she wanted to straighten her hair. My daughter has beautiful flowing mane of hair, you know, and she wanted to straighten her hair. I said, well, why do you want to straighten your hair? And she says, well, the girls at my school always are like touching my hair and I think they're making fun of my hair. And I said, I don't think they're making fun of your hair. I think your hair is so different from their hair that they don't know what to do with it. And I said, and I think that they've never really seen anybody like you, sweetheart. My daughter is like, she's a monster. She's 14 and she looks like she's 25. She's physically fit. She's strong. She's big, strong, fast, smarter.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, listen, you're in an environment where they haven't really seen a girl like you, really. They don't grow up around people culturally like you. You're with our biracial family and our bicultural family. So you're unique to them. Take that uniqueness and wear that as a badge of honor. You don't have to look like them. You don't have to dress like them. You can just be yourself. Be Wonder Woman. And so when I told her that, she never straightened her hair. So she's like, I'm good where I am. And it helps her in her confidence, because now some guy can't come and tear down her self-esteem. She's got high self-esteem.
Yeah, love that.
She can't like I'm not worried about anybody putting their hands on her. That would be an awful
mistake.
That would be an awful mistake. So they'll find out real quick that she's not like. And she's had a couple of occasions where she's like calmly explained to a boy. She's like, listen, like I don't know if you're doing it on purpose or what your deal is, but like my dad told me that if someone treats me like that, like I'm gonna have to give you hands. And the kid's like, what? She's like, I'm gonna put you in the clinch, I'm gonna knee you, I'm gonna put you on the ground, and I'm gonna rip your arm off. And very calmly she told, and so the boy was like, okay, like this is not going the way that I thought it was gonna go.
Let's not
and so I had one of the teachers told me, she's like, I saw her, like she told him, she on no uncertain terms, and she's like my heart, she's like, I was so like, oh my gosh, she's so confident, like she's like, and the boy believed her, he knew. And I was like, yeah, well, like that was her way of letting him know, hey, you can't physically impose your will on me. I'm gonna fight back. So I think he got the message, right? So that all comes from training. That's very, very important. And also even confidence in school, confidence socially. The stuff just doesn't bother them, man. Like I can't even express, like even sports, whether it's training or not. Like my son, my wife used to always get on, why do you always make him spar? I'm like, sweetheart, he plays basketball. He's going to get into a fight. Every goddamn fight I ever had was started either on a basketball court. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And sure as crap, it happened. Yeah, my son, like I knew that he can fight. My biggest concern, did he know when it was time to go? Yeah. And it happened, and he showed me that he knew, and I was like, okay. He knew, and he and the boy that he had to scrape with are very good friends now, and he's actually a really good kid. I just think the kid was having a bad day. Gotcha. And he kind of crossed the line, pushed Cassius, and Cassius was like, hey, what's your deal? And the kid kind of did this to him. He flinched at him, and before I blinked, Cassius hit him with three-pieced him, pop, 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 jab, cross, hook immediately, and it just came out of him. So my wife was there. She was like, she's like, I never thought my son would actually hit someone, and I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, is he going to get in trouble? I'm like, no, the kid checked every box on what to do to get punched. He literally checked every box. They're fine. The goal isn't to turn them into these things where they just run around fighting and solving their problems by punching people in the face. That's not proper training. That's not even the right spirit of martial art. It's not even, you're going to spend a lot of time in the principal's office if the kid's going to be acting like that. Yeah. But in my gym, we hold them completely accountable from their behavior to their academic performance, all of it. I have kids that were last year. A kid came to me in the first quarter. She's D's and F's. Bad attitude, wouldn't do her work well, listen to mom. And so after we had a couple intense smoke sessions, her and I, because I recognize the problem. And the problem is that when they get to a certain age, if you've allowed this bad behavior to continue, they kind of are like, so I'm gonna do what I want now. Yeah. Until they run into someone who's like, oh yeah, no, that's not gonna work. Yeah. So literally it was like boot camp for her. I would call her, come here. First time she'd walk over to me, go away. So go back where she was, come here. She'd walk over to me, go away. And the other kids are looking at her, like, someone explain it to her. And the other kid's like, coach calls you, you run. She's like, run? Kids like sprint as fast as you can. I'm like, come here. She have that shot, go away. Everyone, burpees. So now make everyone do burpees. Everyone stands up. Next time I call, and they're all looking at her like, you better sprint. So the third, now finally she gets up and she sprints to me. And she got her hand on her hip. I'm like, take your hand off your hip. I'm not your equal. When I call you, you say, these are three answers. Yes, coach. No, coach. I don't understand. Because I'm going to talk to you like that. I speak to you in yes or no. Just to let, so you establish that. Then I got her grades. She brought her report card in. I read all of their grades out in front of the entire room. And some of the parents are like, aren't you concerned that I embarrass them? I'm like, she's not embarrassed when she's not doing her schoolwork. Don't be embarrassed when you get the result. So I read her grades out, balled up her grades, threw it at her, hits the ground. She looks at it. I'm like, you might as well get a broom and clean it up, because those are the kind of jobs you're going to have if you don't do better in school. Gotcha. And she's like,
how old is she?
She's 12. She's 12. Actually 13 now. So, but second quarter, honor roll. Third quarter, honor roll. Fourth quarter, honor roll. In one school year. And so her mom was like, yeah, she's paying attention at home. I don't have to get on her about it, because she's like, all I have to do is like, hey, maybe we should talk to coach about why you're not listening. And she's like, no. Because she knows there's going to be immediate, I don't mess around. Like, so I'm like, oh, you messing around in school? Okay, cool, no problem. Come on, let's go. And I don't even understand, I have these parents. It's part of the parents though. And I tell the parents, I'm direct with them. I'm like, some of you guys are weak. You listen to their nonsense. Oh, the teacher doesn't like me. No, it's because you're not doing your work.
Yeah.
It's because you're being a jerk when you're not supposed to be.
You're making the job harder.
100%.
Yeah.
Like the teachers have other things to do than pick on your child.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so stop buying into their bullshit. Like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. Like, I had a parent come in the other day. Well, every time she gets ready to come, she complains that she has a headache and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, she probably does have a headache. It's called distress, because she doesn't do anything all day long. And she's coming to the one place that she knows she has to perform. And you're listening to her whine and cry, so now you're wasting your money, right?
Don't you love being real with people like that?
100%.
I'm real all the time. Like, when I do personal training, like, why waste your money? I don't need your money.
No.
If I'll give you 110% if you give me 110%, but don't waste my time. Don't waste your own time.
Can't stand it.
Yeah.
People beating around the bush. Like, why? Like, listen, man, life's too short. So when people come to me as coach, I need to talk about something, and I'll listen to their. Look. If all you want to do is
once you listen to them, if they take action.
Yes. If you want to just teach punches and kicks, get out of this business. Honestly, like, even as a trainer, you're not just teaching people how to work out. You're teaching how to defeat themselves and lift themselves up when you're not there.
Yeah, mindset, discipline, habits,
100%.
all these things.
100%.
Right?
So my rule is that just be willing to hear the truth. Right? Like we all have to hear it. I have mentors that tell me the truth, and I have people that tell me the truth in my life.
You respect people who tell you the truth too.
100%.
If I tell you the truth, you respect. Even if you don't like me for it, you respect me for it.
Has nothing to do with it. It's either true or it's not true.
Yeah, that's
like.
And I've always said that if I lose a friend or someone doesn't like me because I've told them the truth, but if they may change, so be it.
So society right now is at a place where because you got the far left, the far right, and everything in between, goofy, but they're all the same guy. Right? They're just different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So what happens? You can't even have a conversation with people. Like, it disturbs me greatly that, like, for instance, we were talking about sports, trans athletes in sports. It disturbs me greatly that you can't even have a logical conversation with some people, because they think because you oppose what they want that you oppose them in their entirety. That's not the case.
It's not a critical thing.
No, they're just like, well, you don't like trans people. I'm like, what? I have trans students and trans family members, and like, that has nothing to do with it. What I'm merely telling you is, from an athletic standpoint, in my world, no governing body is going to sanction a fight between a 135-pound man and a 135-pound woman, even though they're the same height, same size. They're not going to sanction it. Why? The strength difference, the bone structure, the power the man can generate versus what the woman can generate. It's that simple. So when we had this conversation about trans athletes, I preface it with, I am all for trans rights. I want people to love who they love, be who they are. I have some criticism for them though, for the trans community. And my criticism to them, what I would say to them is, you're emotionally tougher than you're portraying. If you want to live free, freedom is when you don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks about you.
Amen, right?
Right?
100%.
That's freedom.
Yeah.
So if you're a man who feels like a woman, identifies as a woman, and wants to dress and live as a woman, do so. Do so freely, though, without giving a rat's ass what anybody around you thinks. Even if it's your own friends and family. Because what's going to happen is, those people will turn on you no matter what, those who don't agree with you. But you're going to find a tribe and the people who do vibe with you that you can be that with, and it's going to be okay. Instead of trying to force other people to be okay with you, you need to be okay with you.
Yeah, which is the hardest thing for most people.
They can't do it because we're in constant need of human contact. We're afraid to,
what is it?
Affirmation from other people.
Yeah, affirmation, pat on the back.
Yeah, no, attaboys and all that kind of stuff. It's like, wait a minute, what about if I pat myself on the back? What if, you know what? I'm happy being me. I'm happy just doing what I want to do. And guess what? All this shit goes away. Now, for the rest of us who are like, hey, look, that person's being happy, being who they are. And if I see someone else trying to impede that, then I have the social and the moral responsibility to stop that person from doing that. Regardless of whether or not I agree with what they're doing. That has nothing to do with it. It's that person.
Human being, isn't
yes.
It? Yeah.
It's that person's trying to live their life, and this person's being a dick and trying to stop them from doing so. Okay, I got to stop you now. I have to say something to you on their behalf, because they need to know that they don't have a safe place to try and attack and demean and hurt other people. That there are some of us around who are like, yeah, no, we're like, literally in my gym we have a rule: fighting solves everything. We have t-shirts that say fighting solves everything. And the reason why is because, like, literally there are things I'm willing to fight you for. Yeah. I'm willing to come to blows with you over you harassing this couple who's different from you, or this person. Like, no, don't do that. What are you gonna do about it? Like, okay, okay, now you're getting ready to open up something you don't want to open up, because I will do something about it. If more people behave like that, you would see less safe space for stupid stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The reason why, it even extends to racism. The reason why racism still exists is because the people who know better won't hold their idiot family members and friends accountable. Yeah, that's... If you had a friend who's saying racist stuff, and you're like, hey, you, don't say that again. Do not say that again around me, and if you do, it's a problem. I'm telling you, I'm not a sounding board for that kind of stuff, right? Like we had a friend, back in the 90s, you said the R word, people would say it. Oh, that guy's retarded, this is retarded, and then what happened? You get older, and I have a friend that comes to me and says, hey, I have a special needs son. And that word is derogatory towards people like this. And it strips away from their humanity. Can you guys do me a favor and not use that word? At least around me. My friend had to ask me that one time. And everybody around me knew, you will not say that word in my presence.
It's just leading by example, right?
Yes.
And even the racism word, not even addressing it. It doesn't. No, I don't mean not addressing, but the skin color. It shouldn't even be talked about.
No, but here's the problem, though. In the United States, it's always been a thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
But it's the foundation in many places of the country. So if it was the foundation of this very building, in order to get rid of it, you have to dig up the entire building and go kill it and then do it again. You know, most people won't do that is because they know that socially they're going to be ostracized.
And that's the thing, right? And that's what's always been in the past on everything.
That's what it is.
Nobody wants to put the head up. And
I have a friend of mine who's a very wealthy guy, very successful guy, and he calls me one day. He goes, I agree with a lot of stuff that you say on Facebook, because I talk about race openly. And it's not in the sense that all white people are racist and we're the victims. No, it's about the impact socially, economically, and all these things of, look, it's not cool anymore to put on a white sheet and get on a horse and go to somebody's front house and burn a cross. You get your ass kicked doing that. And everyone knows that. Everyone has gotten to this point in society going, hey, whoa. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
But, Mary in HR who sees a name on a piece of paper who sounds too ethnic and throws that away, that now is more damning than the guy on the cross. Yeah. Make sense? So what we have to do, my friend that's very wealthy, he says, I agree with a lot of stuff that you say, but I can't really say it out loud. I said, well, why not? And he said, it'll fuck up my business. I said, what do you mean? He goes, there are people that I do business with that will kind of ostracize me because if I align myself with this thought process. And I'm like, it's very interesting. I appreciate him telling me that, but it's very interesting because you don't think of it in those terms. Right? Because people say, well, it shouldn't matter, but it does matter. In America, it does matter. Now, if I go to England or go to Costa Rica or go to, places where slavery wasn't a big thing and there wasn't a big civil rights movement and there wasn't all these other things, this turmoil. America's been in a constant state of turmoil since we founded, right? Then you don't have the connotations with. People don't come to they don't realize in that moment, it's like, oh, he's just this black dude from, wherever, right, from the States. Not to say that there isn't racism other places. But knowing how to navigate and understand, hey, surround yourself, build your tribe, such that these guys aren't going to tolerate that kind of stuff. Like my white friends will they literally, when I grew up, my white friends were, if someone said something racial, I had to pull them off of them. They would go. Like that was an immediate go button.
Gotcha.
Like that was like, they're like, what'd you say? Like, oh no, that's a fight. We're fighting. Like You know, and it was several times, and it was because we all had a mutual respect for each other.
Yeah.
We all played ball together. We were around each other all the time. We were in and out of each other's houses, refrigerators, we're like everything.
Yeah.
So that was just our tribe. And so I think a lot of people have forgotten the power of that community, the power of, hey, you know what? Why do the stupid people have the microphone right now? Why are they the ones talking loud? Like, I'm concerned about my gay friends. I was just talking to some people yesterday, and I was like, y'all let trans people take over your whole thing is now all about trans, and that's like less than 1% of your whole community. So what about the gay rights that you were fighting for? What happens? We've seen it happen in civil rights. Black people will start talking about things that impact black people. Next thing you know, they throw like women's driving rights in Saudi Arabia into the mix, and then the midgets in the Himalayas are like we're like everything gets all like wait a minute, we haven't even resolved this issue yet.
Yeah.
So then the can kind of gets kicked down the road, and you find that's why it seems like nothing ever changes. And then for my white friends, they're like, dude, what are you talking about? We had a black president, everything's cool. Like and they're not being flippant. They're like, from their perspective.
Yeah,
they're like, everything's done. It's, what are you talking about? I don't hate black people. My parents didn't hate black people. So it's kind of like this weird place where you have to take off. You have to take off everything you know and be willing to maybe face some of the people that are in our circle who have influenced us and realize that, they were wrong. That's a hard...
It's been a lot of wrong.
Brother, that's a hard look for people to
I always think about what we're doing wrong today, that we're going to look back in 20, 40 years and go, oh my God, I can't believe.
Well, I can tell you right now, one, capitulating to this whole nonsense that everybody's a winner, that's not okay.
That's definitely big. I think we've kind of learned that already there. I think we're in the process of learning that.
No, I think it's getting worse, and I'm going to tell you why. Yeah, listen. So, you look at like... schools. The big debate in schools about critical race theory and all this other stuff. And it's like, why don't you just teach history? Just tell the truth. Like, okay, yes, Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves. He was also a white supremacist. Like that's like, people are like, what? I'm like, if you want, I can go pull his speeches. And they're like, what are you talking about? I didn't know that. Or people say, why do they have Black History Month? All history guys. I'm like, I'm not a big fan of Black History Month. It relegates my people's accomplishments to 28 days. It's the shortest month of the year, in fact. And it relegates their accomplishments and contributions to this great country to 28 days. Yeah. And they only want to talk about the same like 4 pro Negroes every 12 months, like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King. Like you're going to get the same 2 or 3 people they talk about. And what's even more devastating is for my non-Black people and family members who are like, I never knew, like I'll share something online about history and they're like, I never knew this. Is this true? And I'm like, yeah, like this, whoa. And I realize it's our education system.
Absolutely.
It's intentional. Like that's not an accident.
No,
that's intentional.
Nothing's an accident.
No, that's intentional.
Nothing happens.
It's an intentional omission, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you maintain a power structure? If there's always a hierarchy,
it's what you teach and
that's what teach. I can control it.
It's literally brainwashing. Yeah.
Think about school. When we have lunch, noon. We have lunch at noon. We go to work at 9. We go to school at 8. We have lunch at noon. We get out at 4. What's your work schedule like?
It's exactly setting you up to
they want obedient employees.
Don't ask questions. Don't think back.
100%.
Don't color outside the lines.
100%. Never.
And you get the few people like us who are entrepreneurs, work for ourselves, who find a different path. But we're not taught that.
No.
We figure that out. We're lucky enough to figure that out for ourselves.
I came to it through frustration. I was playing by the rules. Look, my wife had a great job at AIG Corporate. I worked for Wells Fargo at the time. We were eBay's fraud security team. We built our whole fraud protocol on eBay. We had great jobs in San Francisco, worked in the financial district, and we were losing, and we were playing by the rules. We were losing. Every dime that I made went to someone else.
Well, that's the way it's
set up. So you're like fighting against the system. Like, wait a minute, the system is broken. I'm like, no, it's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was intended to work.
Right? I love that.
So once you realize that, you come to that.
Once you realize that, right?
That's the awakening.
Yeah.
The moment of, wait a minute. No matter how hard I work, this isn't an effort issue. This is what I tell people. If it was an effort issue, day workers would be millionaires.
Yeah, cleaners, house cleaners.
Who works harder than they do?
Yeah.
Like coal miners in West Virginia would be millionaires.
Yeah.
So it's not an effort thing. It's a systemic thing. What side of the system do I understand? Where do I fall? And so the entrepreneurial walk for me began when that light went off, and I was like, okay, this isn't rigged. Like, this is rigged. This is why you feel like you're just a hamster running around on this wheel and you can't get off. Right? And it was like, oh. So then out of frustration, I went to the bookstore one day, and I was like, I'm gonna find a book by someone who understands what the hell I feel right now.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
That's exactly the book.
It was that book, was it?
It's exactly the book.
That literally changed my life.
I
was lucky at 21 to read that book.
I was in my late 20s when I read it. I was actually I was in my late 20s. I was probably like 29, 30 years old. So I read the book, and it just made sense to me.
Just tipped everything you grew up to believe on its head.
Oh.
Everything your parents taught you.
Well, I was like, oh, this is why. Like this, like it literally was like, oh, well, this is why I feel this way. This is because that is this way. And so through Robert's words, I was like, okay, so then now what? Right?
Yeah.
So now what? So then it was like real estate. Like, I got that. And then I actually worked with one of his former Rich Dad advisors. It's a very interesting thing. I bought this house in Sacramento, and it was my first investment property. It ended up being a home run. Like, it was a home run. I made basically my yearly salary off of this house.
Did you really? Nice.
And so I wrote Dolph Bruce at the time. I wrote him this email. Hey man, I just want to let you know I took your book. I read the book, and then I bought my house, and this is what happened. Here's the numbers. Thanks for writing this book. It's awesome. Next day, I get this email back from his assistant. Like, Dolph is doing a video about his system. We'd like to fly you to Phoenix tomorrow so you can meet him and tell him what happened. So on camera was the first time he ever heard the story. So I told him, and he's like, wait. He's like, you just did all this? I'm like, yeah, like I had all the paperwork and all these things. So that was a genesis for my awakening in that regard. It's like the old Jimi Hendrix lyric, man. You know, manic depressive. You know what you want, but you don't know how to go about getting it. You know what I mean? And you like in that kind of if you stay in that cycle, it's vicious. You start to tear yourself apart.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you're like, well, I'm working hard because you've been told work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, blah blah blah, like all this stuff. And I'm doing all these things, and I'm still losing. I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
But then you also buy into like competing with the Joneses. You gotta have the newest stuff, buy stuff we can't afford to impress people we don't like.
Ah, fuck.
And that's where we just get stuck.
I've been victimized by my own desires in that regard before, right?
I think we all have, but I think some people learn to break free. And when I break free from that, now I'm free.
No, 100%.
I'm so free.
100%.
It's insane.
Now, the thing is like I can have a standard by which, like, for example, now my wife and my kids are in 8th grade and 9th grade respectively, but we spent a lot of time traveling, spent a lot of money on their training, their regiment, their tutors, because this is the season that they're in to establish that for themselves so they can go forward. I've already done more as far as setting up their future than what was done for me. My mom loves me to death, but she was not raised in that environment where it's like you start thinking about future investments.
Yeah.
I got annuities and all these other things that we're doing. Like that wasn't part of our thing. We're trying to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different mindset. But
survival mode, right?
100%. But we sit down and have conversations like, hey, look, yeah, we could go buy a bigger house right now, but then that impacts what we can do for the kids right now. So we can't do both. So what do we want to do? Oh, we have a stand. I laugh all the time. I was like, man, if I didn't have the kids, I wasn't spending the money I am with them, I could drive a Lamborghini if I wanted to. Not that I would, but I could. But the idea is like, but why though? Why drive something like that? My car, I love my car, but I got one. My wife has one car. We're not having 4 or 5 cars sitting around the house. We're not like we do one big vacation a year. We'll do a little mini, because we travel a lot with the kids, but one big thing a year. Christmas time, we're less about gifts and more about experiences. We want to create memories.
That's my life in general, experiences.
Yeah, just experiences. Like, well, let's
drive a crappy car, live in a crappy unit.
Hey,
I have experiences
but you can go places. Yeah, you can go places.
I can get up and go whenever I want. And to me, that's what makes
like the
me
best
happy.
feeling, right?
It's amazing.
It's the best feeling. So, and whatever that thing is for people, I encourage them to do those things. But some people are so afraid to change that paradigm, they won't even ask themselves the question.
Well, they're so worried about someone else's opinion, which goes back to literally a whole conversation.
I always call this making a decision 6 places removed. And people are like, what do you mean when you say that? Okay, I'm going to do this. well, I'm not going to do it because I knew this guy who was married to this lady. She had a cousin. Her cousin was married to this other girl whose mom once tried it and failed. And now you're not going to try to do what you do because 6 people removed failed.
Yep.
And you don't know what their skill set was. You don't even know what their business plan was. You don't know anything about them. You just know it didn't work. So therefore, you're not going to work. It's like this weird thing that people do, and I'm like, I don't grasp that. I tell people this all the time. It's like, be bold. You know, I moved out of my house, my parents' house, when I was 17 years old. I was a senior. I graduated. I was going to college. I moved out, and I've never been back. Not because I don't love my parents. I love my parents. But as far as like, I never had to go back and move back in with them. I hustled. I grind. You know, I did when I was in college, you know, I was cutting guys' hair in my dorm room to make money. I'd take that money and go buy a keg and get red cups and then take that money and stack it. Like I was doing, that's the hustle, man.
Yeah.
That's the hustle. So that's the grind. So like the freedom that you get, that I have as an entrepreneur is I grew up broke. So I know I can do broke.
Yeah, and when you've been very broke, you never want to go back.
No.
And I feel like you got to be broke to have the appreciation of how much it sucks.
I've been bankrupt.
Yeah,
I went through bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
But I tell people all the time, I don't care about that. I tell people my failures. I'm okay sharing my story of how I failed.
Because that's made who you are today.
100%. Like that failure, the pressure, the people, oh my God, were you stressed? I was like, my wife was pregnant with twins. I didn't have time to be stressed. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I had to find a way.
And things feel easy ever since, right? Because you've been so bad where it's like, this is nothing compared to what I've been.
Dude, like, are you kidding? Like, I've been in the army. It's like, I've been shot at where nobody's shooting at us.
Yeah,
we're good. like honestly, like I tell, like
someone didn't make my frappuccino right, like the end of the world, right?
Last year we were stuck in a hurricane. My wife and I on our honeymoon. We went to New Orleans. When we took off, it was like just a storm. It was raining. By the time we landed, it was like Cat 3 hurricane, and it was worse than Katrina. We couldn't get out. So my wife, she's never been through anything like that. So I'm like, okay. So what do we do? I'm like, well, here's the first thing we're gonna do. We're gonna go down to the corner store. We're gonna load up on some supplies because we're gonna get some fresh water that we can keep in the room, bottles of water that we can keep. We're gonna get some peanut butter and jelly makings and stuff that we can keep in the room, a backpack, a boogie bag. I can see if we can get some flashlights, a first aid kit. We're gonna kit it up.
Yeah.
We're staying, and we had a hotel room to stay in, but it was the roof was leaking and the walls were leaking. It was awful, right? But here's the thing. So we're online getting all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, babe, we got all this stuff. She looks at me at one point. She goes, "Are you scared in the least bit?" And I said, "Not really." And she says, "Why?" I said, "Well, I know. Look, we're at our highest elevation point that we can be. We're in the French Quarter in New Orleans. They have all the the pumps working and everything. I'm not really worried about the water coming in. Hey, we're just gonna ride it out." She's like, "What do you think it's gonna be like?" I'm like, "It won't be boring." That's for sure. So
and we're prepared.
So we went through it, and it got ugly, and the power went out in the hotel, and I was able to find the one outlet that was working in the whole hotel.
Oh, really?
But then the cell phones went down because the towers were all like,
you.
it was just one thing after another. So eventually we ended up having to call some family members, and they came down from Atlanta to come get us out.
Okay.
But what I never told my wife, I had already scouted the area, and there was a truck. I knew exactly where it was parked, and I saw the keys hanging out of the subvisor. I was like, I was going to steal that truck and just tell them, hey, sorry, your truck's in Mississippi. We'll deal with it. We'll get it back to you. But and she was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, no, I'd already counted. Like I knew the way out. We couldn't get. We had cash. All the ATMs went down because all the power was out, so we couldn't get any more money. I mean, it was. But I tell you, even in that chaotic moment, the next day, after the hurricane blows through it, it was blowing so strong it reversed the flow of the Mississippi River. That's how bad it was. But we had the most beautiful night that next evening. We were staying in a hotel, and the bartender, I was like, hey, you got any more of that hooch y'all were making back there the other day? And he was like, yeah. He's like, if we don't drink, it's gonna go bad, but they won't let us drink on the job. I'm like, well, they let us drink, we're guests in the hotel. And he was like, let me ask the manager. So he comes out, he's got on a tray, and we got a little candle sitting there. We're sitting there underneath the sky, and it was beautiful, right? It was a beautiful moment. And we ended up getting out of there. And so managing these things, having gone through shit in my life that was way worse than that, it made things, made us like, you know what, we can deal with this. And yeah, we had some lucky things. We had family that was relatively close. They were 8 hours away. They could come get us. But we handled what we could handle then. And then you
that's it,
that's the main thing. That's the main lesson. That's a big lesson of our training. Like, handle what you can handle, man. Handle what you can handle now. Be responsible for yourself. The ultimate sense of responsibility is self-defense. Like that, like I can carry that with me anywhere that I go. Yeah. Whether I'm in San Francisco, whether I'm in Oakland, whether I'm in New York, Atlanta, you name it. No matter where I go, I get on a plane. There's been times where we've been places and I've had to interview with someone getting robbed or someone on a plane acting like a nut, and I'm like, hey, like, my wife will ask me, well, why do you get involved in that? Why'd you help that lady on the bus when she got robbed? I'm like, I'm not a very spiritual person. I don't, martial arts instructors who become spiritual deities bother me tremendously. But if you believe in such a thing, that at the end of your life, when your movie is played about all the opportunities that you had to help someone else, and you chose not to because of whether it wasn't convenient, maybe I was being selfish, maybe I just wasn't in a place, eventually those days add up. So what are the chances? This lady's on a bus with us in San Francisco. I'm the only Krav Maga instructor on that bus. Yeah. She's getting robbed. She's fighting with this guy for a purse, and everyone else turns and looks away while she's literally fighting for her purse and her belongings with this guy. No one is helping, and I'm kind of in the middle of the back of the bus. So I come up and help her, and I grab the guy, and he gives up the purse, and that was it. And I told my wife, I was like, if that were you or Asia, and there was a Krav Maga instructor on the thing, and this guy doesn't help, what's all the training for? What business do I have charging people to learn to be their own hero, and I won't use my skill set to step in and help someone else when they're in need? Gotcha. That does not mean I'm going to put on a cape and fly around the city and foil crime. I'm not doing that. But in my presence, or in that area that I'm in, I feel like, listen, and I've had to step in on a couple of occasions and help, and I'll do it. I gladly do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't have the skill set,
you can't do anything.
You can be courageous all you want, but if you don't have the skill set, because I've seen that where happen too, where guys have the courage, but they didn't have the skill set. Yeah, and it ends poorly for them.
So for me, I've done martial arts over the years, and what I find, it makes you more aware of your surroundings.
100%.
You're able, when you walk in the streets, you're looking at things. What is things you would suggest to people being more aware of the surroundings? What to look out for? Where to have a bag, what side of the street to walk on, where they should have their hands in trouble.
Yeah, so transitional spaces are a big thing, like parking lots. Okay. A parking lot is a big thing. Like I'll get out of the car, I park my car, I walk into the building, I conduct my business, I get in the car and I leave. That's the general way it goes, right? So I get out of the parking lot, now there's people milling about in the parking lot. They're walking, but they're not going anywhere. Think about Walmart. Walmart has the highest incidence of violence in retail.
Oh, really?
But think about the think about the average size of Walmart.
Is also huge.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it's not anything that Walmart is doing to invite it. You think about the average Walmart, how big it is. Yeah. Think about the parking lot. Think about the cross section of people that go to Walmart, right? Yeah. You can have from CEOs to homeless people going in there, and anywhere in between. So anywhere there's people, there's a potential for danger. Right, so being aware of your surroundings. Number one, the 9-foot rule. Like Nordstrom's has a 9-foot rule. You get within 9 feet of their associates to greet you with the greeting of the day. I use that same rule with self-defense. Within 9 to 12 feet, I'm looking at their hands first. What's in their hands? How are they swinging around? Do they have a natural gait when they walk? Are they tense? Are they trying to hide a hand? Are they reaching for something? Is something already in their hand? Hands.
Aware who's around you within a 9-foot radius.
100%.
And then watching the hands first.
Watch your hands first. Then I'll look up and look at body language, tone, pitch. You ever go out to a restaurant or a bar or something, and there's that couple at the bar, and they might be having an argument, but they're trying to act like they're not having an argument. Yeah. But you can feel the tense. Yeah. Like, that's a real thing, right? Those are your natural kind of instincts going, well, something's off with that. So learning to trust your instincts. There's a great book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. Okay. Gavin is a phenomenal writer. I've not read that. He's a security specialist, one of the top guys in this field in the world. And Gavin's phenomenal. And he wrote this book called The Gift of Fear, and it's really about understanding and trusting your own instincts. Okay. The internal alarm system, right?
Which is that's generation. You
can't turn it off.
Yeah, it's there for a reason, isn't
it? People will not listen to it.
Yeah.
Oh, animals definitely have it.
Animals listen to it.
Listen, I always tell people, animals are devoid of racism and all this other stuff and prejudice and all that. They don't give a shit, right? So the gazelles at the drinking hole, right? And he looks up and he's like, there's a lion. If I run right now, that lion will think that I'm being a bitch. That lion will think that I'm racist. That lion will think that I'm judging them. I'm going to stay. That never happens.
He's going to outrun the others.
Like, see ya, I'm gone.
I'm the first
I don't want to be on the menu, right?
Yeah.
Because he had that feeling, and then he saw him. He's like, okay, I'm not staying around waiting for this. Human beings are, unless you're trained to do that, they're incapable of doing it, because then they start thinking about what other people think.
That's crazy.
Or try and talk yourself out of it. It's almost like the horror movie, they hear and they're like, let's go investigate. Let's not go investigate. Like, nothing good's coming of that, right? Like, if you do go investigate, what are you willing to do when you get there, when you see it? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like those things. So trusting those instincts. The other thing is training. You got to train. Like, I tell people this, I'm such a believer in it. If you're not training in some sort of self-defense or martial art, you are your attacker's accomplice. You are their accomplice. They hope you're not training. They hope you're not going to fight back. They hope you're going to pray and okay, no, cooperate with them. Whenever we do a defense with knives or guns, people are like, oh, you might get cut. You might, and I'm like, that was part of the equation the second the knife came out.
Yeah. It's bound to happen.
I've already accepted that part.
Yeah.
The old samurai culture in Japan, what they would talk about is when a samurai accepted that death was part of life, then you can truly live. Death isn't the end of life. It's part of it. Like, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So now I'm free to live and do what I need to do to live an existence that I want to live and not be impeded by that, right?
Gotcha.
And so it's the same thing in business. Like, don't be reckless, but you have to take chances. When you hear words like recession and all these other stuff, it's like, no, dude, there's opportunities there. Somebody's gonna make some money.
Yeah, always.
Like, and even in the Great Depression, you saw millionaires were made during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Right. So
COVID, as a lot of people made money during COVID.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So how did they do it? Right. So then you start looking at that, and all it takes is that one thing.
So many people get caught up, oh, it was a recession, so-and-so's president, this or that. It doesn't make any difference.
Not really.
What makes the difference is what you're doing.
It's what you adjust to. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond. Right? Like, that's like, it's not the thing that happened to me. It's how did I respond to what happened to me?
Yeah,
right?
and constantly pivoting when you have to.
Bro, like, I have had to move my school. I've had to do different things, and people are like, what's going on? And it's like, I'm making calculated decisions based off of the information I have at the time.
Yeah.
Right? And that was one of the other things I learned in the Army, was that, sometimes your intel is wrong. Or shit changed between the time you got that intel and the time you got to where you were going.
Yeah.
It just changed. And instead of going, oh, but it's not supposed to be this way, don't confuse what should be with what is. Like, don't. Like,
100%.
Like, this is what it is. Let's deal with this, what we
Yeah.
know now, not worrying about the other stuff.
What's your pepper spray, mace, things like that?
Okay, so
what's your thoughts on that?
Any tool, if you don't train with it, it's useless to you. In fact,
Even weapons, right? Guns.
Gun. If you don't train with it.
That's my biggest thing with guns in this country is everyone's got them, but no one practices.
So you've got a significant amount of gun owners who are dedicated to the craft of understanding the deployment of the weapon that they've chosen. Okay? But the average gun owner is poorly trained. The average gun owner buys a gun, sticks it in his nightstand.
With the bullet somewhere else, the gun there. They've never loaded the gun under pressure. They've never put the code in.
Go do 10 jumping jacks, 10 burpees, and 10 push-ups, and then pick your weapon up on the range of fire and tell me how tight your grouping is.
Yeah, or load a weapon while someone's breaking in your house.
To do that,
see how well you can actually
put yourself
do
on a clock. Set your clock for 3:30 a.m. Alarm goes off. Sit up, get your weapon, load your weapon, and how long does it take you to get your weapon up?
As quick as possible, yeah.
Like little things like that.
So you're saying the same thing of mace and pepper spray?
Pepper spray. Okay, so I actually just ordered a bunch of inert pepper spray. It's pepper spray without sting.
So practice with.
So we can practice with. So
awesome.
what we're going to do is we're going to give it to people, like, put this in your bag, how you carry your stuff. Now, when I attack you, I want you to go into your bag and spray me with it.
Yeah, is it on your key rings or is it buried under your
Even if
purse?
it's in your key ring, have you practiced getting that shot off while I'm closing on you? By the way, have you pepper sprayed yourself? Did you know that pepper spray doesn't work on like 18 to 20% of the populace? It just doesn't work on them?
Really? So I didn't know that.
Like, that can might malfunction. And if that's your only line of defense and that fails, then what are you? And by the way, that could be for a gun. Guns jam. It could be for a knife. Knives break, it could fall out of your hand. Like, what is your next line of defense? And this is what I always tell people, no matter where I go, I can walk in peace because I am my line of defense. Now, it just so happens that I know how to improvise weapons and do all kinds of stuff. Like
And you have training.
I'm training and I'm ready for but I go into situations of going, okay, I don't know. Like I carry a weapon every day. I carry a firearm. But I train. I train my ass off with my firearm.
Do you shoot both hands and things too? Like,
left hand, right hand, long gun, short, like handgun, shotguns, rifles, left, right, like all of it. All of it from different positions, from prone, standing, kneeling, squatting, sitting, for inside vehicles. We know how to clear rooms. Like I have a shoot house inside my gym for tactical training.
Oh yeah, you do too. Yeah.
So we'll cover these kinds of things, and I've worked with tier 1 operators, guys who have killed more people than cancer. You know, team leaders, Delta Forces guys, Israeli Special Forces guys, where we're going through these scenarios, active shooter scenarios, melee situations where people are running out, you're trying to identify a shooter. We call it force on force. For munitions, for instance, you go inside one of the rooms, go inside one of the buildings, I come in on the side, and our goal is to terminate each other. And use good tactics while we're doing it. That's a whole different level of training.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not like, oh, I bought my gun, I went to the range, I had a Lipton iced tea and I was shooting in targets and everything. It's not the same thing.
So like the average Joe, you got the middle-aged woman with some mace, they gotta practice with that.
I would think, but here's the thing. Not only practice with it, practice from a position of disadvantage. Don't practice when you see the guy coming and you know he's there. Practice, he grabs me. I got a lady today, we're talking about a whole different thing. Lady was talking about the defense for a headlock from behind or a rear naked choke with her. That's why I carry a gun. I'll just pull my gun. I'm like, you really think that if I came up behind you and put you in a rear naked choke?
You've never been put in a headlock before.
They're gonna find your body like this with your hand going through your purse or trying to get your weapon. You're not gonna, like literally, I'm gonna shut you down.
Well, so they're gonna take the weapon from you if it's on your head.
100%. Yeah. So sometimes people can be a lot more arrogant about their abilities because they haven't really tested their ability. I had a student once who...
That's the best, like, I've been a bigger guy, I've always been a bigger, stronger guy. Having been humbled in kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu is the best thing ever happened to me.
100%.
It made me realize how much I don't know and how much I respect someone who does.
100%, right? Because you're like...
Well, especially even you, like...
Yeah. No,
I've
like,
had
listen.
small guys kick that shit out of me.
I've had my ass kicked on a number of occasions. Like, I tell people this all the time. It's like, you know... I sparred with Forrest Griffin one day.
Yeah, I remember. He just humbled you, didn't he?
Well, I love Forrest. Forrest is like a great.
Yeah, I remember.
Like,
I met him last.
He's such a sweetheart. But here's the thing. Like, so I remember I sparred with him, and I come home. My wife, she's like, "How was it today?" I saw it sucked. Forrest punched me a lot. She's like, Forrest Griffin. She's like, you sparred with Forrest Griffin? She's like, yeah. She's like, how'd it go? And I'm like, oh, it didn't go well. I mean, I hit him, but he hit me a lot. Then when we got down on the ground, that was awful. Like the whole thing was awful, right? So she's like, well, why didn't you keep your hands up? I'm like, don't coach me from afar. Like you're not even there, right? But I told her, I said, there's levels to this shit. This guy's a UFC Hall of Famer, right? Now, here's the thing. Granted, none of the stuff that I would normally do was on the table.
Yeah,
I'm not kicking him in the groin. I'm not gouging. I'm not
like.
But I would have to stand a chance with him. That's the only way I would have been able to stand a chance with a guy like that. Is to do something dirty or get a force multiplier, get a weapon to hit him with it, or do something. I know that already, right? Yeah. But the education is that there's levels to this shit.
Yeah.
And you have to work on it, right? Instead of being in your ego going, and I Krav Maga instructors especially, too many of them are falling for their own bullshit.
Okay.
Like, oh, it's too dangerous to do what we do. That's why I don't spar. No, you don't spar because you're cowardly. You don't spar because you don't want to get your ass kicked. That's why you don't spar. Like you don't want to jump in there and put yourself in harm's way. And it's to me reprehensible that they hide behind the mystique that Krav Maga is so dangerous that you can't use it. That's not true.
Yeah.
Like that's totally not true. Like. But it's stuff that people say. It's just like when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like, I could teach a 130-pound woman to take down a 220-pound man. No, you can't. No, let's not be ridiculous. All right, look. She may be able to buy herself some time and control should she find herself in that position. But don't ever make the mistake that weight and size doesn't matter because she's going to get power bombed through the cement. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So you got to be smart, right?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean that it's not effective. Of course it is. But to set people up with a false sense of security, I think is wrong.
Gi on the mats opposed to outside on the concrete and whatever you're wearing, a dress, whatever it is. Like,
I ask them all the time, let's go outside. They're like, huh? Outside. Everyone understands we're rolling outside on the cement. And they're like, are you nuts? Let's go.
That's what happens though. Yeah.
It's hot outside. There's glass there. There's gravel there. Peanut shell covered bar floor, like stuff like this. Okay, now show me that you're training. Now show me that you can apply what you learned. So there's preparation and application. So for me, like weightlifting, I lift weights 4 days a week, right? I'm still powerlifting, not competitively, but I'm powerlifting. Like today I was a bum. I just did cardio today because tomorrow's my lifting day. But that's preparation. That helps me when I punch, when I kick, when I explode, I run through. The application is the actual doing of it now, right? Which is why, like, I never understood the CrossFit thing. It's like, you're the best at exercising. What's that? Like, well, now what do you do with it? Right now, is it well, how functional is it? It's functional for what? Like I'm not. I love the lifts, the push jerks, the cleans, the snatches, the deads, and all those other things. But we don't want to do that just to be the best at exercising. That to me is preparing you to do something. What is the something that you're doing? Okay. Gotcha. For me, that's my thing. Now, so there's all those things that come into it, but the placebo of, you know, any weapon can be a placebo if you don't train with it. It becomes a placebo. Same like a gun. I pick up a gun, and under stress, people forget to do the basic shit. Load the weapon.
Yeah,
because they're stressed, they're freaking out.
Yeah, because I've never been under pressure before.
The weapon.
Yeah.
I remember in the Army, it wasn't combat. It was a skirmish. We're getting shot at. We were receiving fire. We're taking fire from somewhere. And one of the soldiers that was with us, he's like, they're shooting at us. They're shooting at us. He kept saying, they're shooting at us. They're shooting at us. Find someone, push him, hit him, shoot back. He said, oh, okay. And he's always, so what happened was he was in his OODA loop, right? His OODA, observe, orientate, decide, act. It's something that we're all born with.
Yeah.
He couldn't get out of his loop. He was still stuck in that hamster thing. They're shooting at us. They're shooting at us. And he's like, yeah, no, we know, shoot back. Like that's how you stop. He's like, oh. So once he started doing that, he was able to fall into his training. But that's the stress. Stress changes everything, bro. It changes everything. People don't come up to you in the street and bow at you and be like, okay, let's fight.
Yeah, that's
not how this works. Like, oh, if you grab me for mine, I'll just pull my gun. Oh, no.
Lastly, there's a touchy subject I want to talk to you about, and I know you've been putting out stuff on your social media. Yeah. So like all these shootings going on in the country. Yeah. What is the right and wrong thing? Like
as far as I mean, how to deal with an active shooter, or
if you're unfortunate enough to be. I know there's not too much you can do, but
there's some things you can do though.
What can you do?
Run, hide, fight. So run, hide, fight. Goes in that order. If I can run away, get away. Nike defense.
I saw one thing saying not run with the pack, trying to find a different.
So that was I made a video recently about the thing, the melee. And I still believe that. So an active shooter is a little bit different because you definitely don't want to be. Yes, don't get caught up with the pack, but also don't run towards the shooter if you don't have cover, concealment, and understanding where they're going. Now, understanding the general layout of any building that you go to. So think about an active shooter situation. Most of the time, you've probably been to the building before, and so is the shooter.
Okay.
All right, so I'm in school, I'm at my place of work, I'm at the mall, I'm at like any of these places, at church. All these places are things that people have hit in the last 12 months, right? Well, do you really know the building? Do you know the way in and out? Or do you only know the main entrance? Because the mistake I believe that people make, and it was back when we had the shooting at the in Aurora, Colorado, at the movie theater. Okay. Most of the bodies were found in the doorway or atrium of the
that's the only way they knew in.
They all stormed out the way they went in. But you know, there's at least two exits in every movie. Right? Yeah. In every movie theater, they have at least two.
Which would have been the smarter idea.
Now, granted, he had come in that door, but one of the things he could have done, you could low crawl out. People are like, well, if I had my gun, I would just engage him. No, you're not. In a dark movie theater, a guy threw a smoke bomb, there's people running around all over the place, people getting shot. You think you're going to take that weapon and engage the guy?
It's not a movie.
No, I know tier 1 operators that wouldn't take that shot.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like, you try to get out, right? So run, hide, fight. So I run away, hide. Do I know the difference between cover and concealment?
Yeah, talk to me about that.
So cover is something that I can be behind that is going to stop or dissuade or redirect a projectile being fired at. Okay. Something hard and metal or something thick
What's some
enough.
Examples of that? Like
for instance, a car, like a car. But not the car
parts
door.
Of the car, right?
Yes, the front part of the car. So I want to be
behind the engine block.
Behind the engine block. So that's a good one, right? Something that's cover. You know, something thick stone. Thick stone planter. That's cover.
What about in a school?
The school, like you're gonna be like metal desk, anything about metal pillars, anything like that, right? So understanding between cover and concealment. Concealment means it's concealing my presence, but if somebody pops around through it's gonna go through. So that's concealment. Now,
like a door, a cupboard.
100%. I would prefer cover to concealment to nothing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So there's that. So that's the run and the hide part. The fight part is the important part. Now I ran away, I hid, but he's still here. The devil beckons, right? He's at the door. So I'm in a room. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shut the lights off. I'm gonna stack as much shit in front of that door as I possibly can. The reason why? People say, he's still going to come in. Yeah, but he's going to have to orientate, especially if he comes from a well-lit place into a dark place. What happens to your eyes?
So fighting me, make it harder for him to do what he's doing.
And then I'm going to try and grab anything that I can use as a weapon.
Interesting.
Anything I can use as a weapon. It could be a stapler. It could be a stapler. It could be a magazine that I can roll up and use a stick.
Are people being taught this?
I teach it.
I mean, general people being taught this?
I don't think so. Not well enough.
Why not? Because everything he's saying it's so simple, but it makes so much sense.
Well, so we live in a litigious society, and Americans like absolutes. Americans like, if I do this, and I do this, I'm going to survive. What we all need to be honest with them is that doesn't guarantee your survival. We're just trying to improve your chances for survival.
Okay.
Right? So that's the first thing. People are afraid to get sued. The second thing is that they're not asking the right people. They're asking lawyers to come up with ways that we can train the safest way possible by limiting our liability, instead of finding people who know exactly what they're talking about, training these people, right?
Gotcha.
So like Clark County School District is woefully unprepared for active shooter events. Outside of locking the door, lock down the campus and lock the door and put the kids in the back corner somewhere. That is not going to stop someone who wants to get in and do damage. Especially, now again, for younger kids, smaller kids, so they're softer targets. That's why at that last shooting that we had in Texas, Uvalde, why do you think he went to that school? He's going to see the least amount of resistance there. That's why he chose the softest of soft targets as younger kids. Now, older kids, middle school kids, high school kids, they're in the fight. Like, that's the reality. Like, we teach our kids, stack up on the door, we're going to high low. You tackle him low, we'll drive the weapon high, we're going to drive the weapon, keep the weapon pointed up, get him on the ground, we're going to take the weapon from him, and you're going to smash his skull. You're not going to hit it. You're going to hit him until he stops moving. You're going to hit it, and if one of you knows how to fire the weapon, put 2 runners in his chest and 1 in his face. Kill him. And they're like, they're not there to subdue him. You don't know if he has an improvised explosive device. You don't know if there's another shooter with him. You don't know what his intent was, other than the fact that he's there to do one thing, kill you. So you must do to him before he does to you.
It's literally a war situation.
It's like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's an unpleasant thing. I've taught active shooter survival to Fortune 500 companies, school districts around the country.
Okay.
I've done these things before. I taught at the FDA, an active shooter scenario at FDA, at AT&T. I've taught these things. And this is some of the basic things that I talk about. One of the instances we were teaching some medical people, and went through a scenario with him. He says, okay, guy comes in, you high low, you take him out. You got the weapon, you got control of him, right? What do you do? He points at this guy. Guy says, I'm gonna go run and get the anesthesiologist. What?
To put him asleep?
To put him asleep. Yeah. And like, why? Well, we figured that's the safest way to put him asleep. And we're literally like, this is the guy you don't want anywhere near you during a situation like this. He doesn't understand the assignment. It doesn't matter. At that point, I have no interest in saving that man's life.
No.
I have no interest in whether he lives or dies. I'm going to do damage to him so he cannot hurt anyone else in this world.
Yeah, okay.
And that has to be the mentality. Now, people say, oh my God, you would do that with kids? Listen, Attila the Hun was like, what, 14? So don't tell me that children, in Somalia, children 9, 10 years old carrying AK-47s. You know what I mean? Like, we saw it in the military, in Iraq and Afghanistan, children carrying weapons, children with bombs, children with don't tell me what children can and can't do. I know what they can and can't do, particularly if they're trained well and they're committed well and there's enough reinforcement there. So that's another reason why to get your kid trained, because I tell my kids all the time, I don't give a shit what your teacher says to you.
Yeah.
Run, hide, fight. You guys know what to do, right? Yeah.
As far as fighting, what other things can you do? Like talking about
fighting. So again, improvised weapon. Could be scissors. I grab a thing of scissors.
So grab sticks,
scissors. And by the way, you're completely committed to engaging this person at this point. At this point, he gets in the room, he will kill everybody in there. You have no shot unless you overwhelm him with force and kill him first.
How you say you got a room barricaded? You've got weapons.
Yeah.
Where are you hiding?
Generally,
before?
I'm stacked by the door because when they come into the room, I put a video up on TikTok recently. When they come into the room, they're typically looking down the barrel of their weapon. Their own shoulders block their line of sight. They don't check their.
So you want to come from the side and
I want to come from low in the side. So I don't want to be at eye level. I want to be squatted down low when he comes in, leading with the weapon. We'll go after the weapon first, get the weapon pointed to the sky, and have the fight beyond.
And as weird as this question is, what is the best place to attack? Like, you're going to hit someone with a stick.
As far as parts of the body?
Yeah, are you going straight for the back of the head? Are you any way you can possibly can?
So ears, eyes, nose, throat, groin. Ears, eyes, nose, throat, groin are the preferred targets, but if I can't get to that, I'm going to take the neck and the head.
Okay.
And I'm going to do damage to that area right there. I generally stay away from the back and the torso. They can take shots there.
Okay.
Right? So
I know it's a weird conversation, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be.
It has to be
had. Yeah.
Again, the science of violence, right? The science of violence. Like I said it before, savagery and violence need to be celebrated a lot more than it is, because people are saying there's no place for violence in our society. They're wrong. That is not true. They're good men must be willing to do bad things to bad men in order to keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
Violence always has to be part of it. Has to be part of it. The potential for violence. Like, people will mess with you because they think they can. It's like, oh, this guy's always messing with me. Yeah, because you did something to make him think he can do it without retribution. There's going to be retribution.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, there has to be a thing. You know, and there's the old quote that if violence must be done to a man, you must do it in such a way that his retribution not be feared. And I'm a big believer in that. It's like, if I'm going to hit you, I'm gonna bust you up bad. People are like, you worried about a guy coming after you? No, because if someone says my name to him, his brain will send shivers down his entire body, because he'll look in the mirror and still be wearing the scars of what I did to him.
Gotcha.
The emotional scarring will be worse. Gotcha. Like all of those things are happening. Like, you have to be, but you have to train yourself to get to that point. You have to be willing to do it, and you got to finish. So we have a couple components. Be mentally tough, right? Be physical. That means work hard, prepare yourself, and then finish what you start. Have the commitment level. Your three paradigms are your three pillars for self-defense are going to be the physical part, the mental part, and the emotional part. And the parts, those things all work in tandem. But a lot of people will skip that physical part. Mentally, they're turned on. I got my pepper spray. I have my gun. I've got my locks on my doors and my ring key. They're thinking about safety. So mentally, they're turned on, but they haven't physically done the work.
Okay.
So that's kind of the challenge.
And just lastly, like, you're American. You're born here. You're big. You love guns.
Yeah.
Shoot a lot. How do you stop what's going on in this country?
Okay, so there has to be a common sense gun control. This is just my opinion. I believe,
because I want to ask you, because you shoot and you have guns, and but you're also very safe.
Yes, but I also think that, like, we have an abundance of weapons in our country. We have more weapons than people.
That's three weapons per person. Yeah.
So I think at this point, I think we could go down the list of weapons and say, you know what, we don't need any more of these in society.
But how do you take them away?
You're not going to take them away. No, I'm not. You're not going to go door to door and take away Americans' guns. What I'm saying is, don't allow any more of them.
Okay, to be made or sold, or okay.
The ones that are here are here.
Okay, you're still going to get your black market, but the legals.
Try to squeeze them.
Okay.
Try to squeeze it a little bit and make it as tough as you can. Now,
what ones should be taken away straight away, in your opinion? Like the automatics, semi-automatics.
Everyone likes to pick on the AR-15 because it's the #1 weapon sold in the United States, right? And high capacity round magazines and all sorts of stuff. I think that's the hardest part of the equation, is where would you start with it, right?
Okay.
Where do you start? So
whatever you say is going to be the wrong answer.
100%. Yeah. It's going to be. So, but you have to at least be willing to broach the subject. Do we need any more weapons? And people are going to tell you, look, Second Amendment all day. I totally agree with it. But there are some Americans who, in my opinion, while it's a right to own a weapon, they're too stupid and too ignorant to own one, and too dangerous. Mental illness and all these other things going on. Like, I'm sorry, it's a right. Yes, you have a right, but you individually can't, like, you know what I mean? So it's tough because it's part of the fabric of our country. Now, again, I think it's one of the things that keeps us safe from foreign invasion. They'll lose more soldiers going door to door trying to take Americans out of their homes than they will in combat.
What's going on in Ukraine right now? We're not hoping to America.
No.
because they got their own militia. America is militia, right?
If you tried that, if a country tried that, even attempted to do something like that, it's a death sentence for them.
Whereas Australia's in a different story.
Different story.
We don't have mass shootings, but if someone wants to invade the country, we're probably in a lot of trouble.
Well, that's why they depend on NATO and everybody else.
Well, that's why we got America as a big brother.
Well, that's why I was teased. Canadians, they're America's hat. You know, they don't have to invest. If Canada doesn't have to invest in a navy, they got a couple tugboats. What do they need a navy for? We have the largest navy in the world.
Yeah.
Mexico is in a perfect position. Mexico and Canada are in a perfect position. They could tell the rest of the world, kiss my ass, and no one's going to do anything to them about it because they'd have to come over here to do it. And that's kind of the thing. So I get it. So that's what makes America so robust. But we have to come to a decision at some point. Do we value that more than we value our safety and our safety? Because we got schools and churches being shot up. And at some point, even as a gun owner, I look at that and go, wow, like, how do we stop it? And we have to, at some point, start to limit the amount of weapons that come in and out of the country. But I'm gonna tell you right now, the black market, like you mentioned, same thing with drugs. It's big business. And we have people complicit in our government on both sides of it. I'm gonna tell you, you couldn't bring that much drugs into the country without government complicit. No. It's impossible. And we're talking about border safety. We're talking about border safety. We have like billions of tons of cocaine coming across the borders every single year, but we're talking about border safety. Like I always tell people all the time, I'm like, don't you think that that's weird? Don't you think it's odd that those drugs, they come in here unmolested and they end up in the same black and brown neighborhoods all over the place, but the drugs are consumed outside of the hood? You think that's an accident? The war on drugs has been a complete and utter disaster. And by the way, I do think that's why people are hesitant to try to have a war on guns, because they know how futile the war on drugs has been. The war on drugs has been a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. They're not having a war on drugs. They're complicit. So